are starting. Hello. Hello, everybody. So nice to see you. My name is Alicia. You're watching ILBC TV, and I'm so happy to welcome you to another episode of Feedback and Friends. So before we get started tonight, I just want to thank the usual crowd for coming out. I see you all already, and it is definitely not too late to put your tracks in the queue for tonight. This is right at the beginning. If you get your track in now, there's only a few ones ahead of you, but it definitely starts to fill up later on. So make sure that you get in before it's too late. All right, so I'm going to make just a couple of announcements because we've really been cracking this week. We've done a lot of cool content and we have a lot of cool content to go. So basically what I wanted to show you is that we have a few events other than this one this week. Obviously today is Feedback and Friends. On Saturday, we're doing another episode of Primp My Live, which is a show that I do where we take a produced song and we turn it into a performance. So it can be through any means that we want, and we kind of do it back and forth. And if you want to be on this show, just hit me up and we can talk about it. This week is going to feature Mars Medic, who is a Canadian instrumentalist, producer, and songwriter. And it's going to be his first time setting up a live electronic set with Ableton. So I'm really excited to check that out. And then another new announcement. Some of you may know Unity of Noise. He actually came on another feedback session recently, and we all had a great time. He is going to start doing a regular show called Sampling Sundays. Sorry for that. I needed a de-esser. And Sampling Sundays. Sorry, there's no way to say that. That's not painful, but maybe someone will sample that. So Sampling Sundays is aimed more at the North American time zone because I realize that I'm in Spain and I do things when, I'm awake, but some of you in the US and Canada are at work and you can't watch things. So this is going to be Sampling Sunday on North American time, so 7 p.m. PST, with Unity of Noise from his studio in Denver. So please do, if you're not already, subscribe and tune in to what we have going on. And so right now, we're just chilling. I've got Nathaniel in the house, and we will have Unity of Noise joining us really shortly. He's just doing a couple of things, but he will be joining us pretty quick. So let's get to it. We have first up Peter Lee. Shouts out. Peter has been so awesome in our community and super loyal. We love having you here. And so we're going to listen to a track called Winnie Hill. And right now we don't have a ton of people in the queue. And yeah, if you get in early, we're probably just going to get to listen to the whole track. So let's see what this is. And this is a Bandcamp link. Super cool. All right, super nice hypnotic vibes on that one. What do you think about that, Nathaniel?
We had Barrett saying it sounded like an 80s TV theme vibe, which I actually can kind of get as a summary. Ooh, somebody else is playing now.
Sorry.
Um, the I think that if you consider it in that context, the first iteration of it works. But the problem is once you get to that second repeat where it effectively just does the same thing again. And I think that if you were considering, say that, if we are going to go ahead with this is a TV theme thing, usually what they do is in when they expand it into a full piece, they usually end up deviating or riffing on that initial concept really heavily. And I feel like there's a bit of a missed potential there, especially with things like the bass, where it kind of just sort of does exactly the same thing as the rest of the track. It's the dun 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 dun, really really simple melodies. When it feels like it could act more as a drone in places, or go a little bit crazier, a little bit funkier. Case with the pads, where it would have been nice to have them occupy a wider space as the track developed, because they're still sort of really centralized, the same way as a lot of the elements in track, and you have all this space to play with that's kind of just not quite utilized yet. I mean, it's a really cool vibe, and you definitely want to preserve that, but it's just about amplifying that vibe, not changing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that for me, there was that moment, like about halfway through, where I felt like I wanted it to evolve. I wanted it to do a little bit something more, just like Nathaniel was saying. The bass, I do agree with some of the comments in the chat that it was a little bit quiet, but more, I really wanted it to evolve in a really subtle way, because you can use repetition as there's a fine line between hypnosis and boredom, right? There's like a really tricky part that you have to reach. And I really enjoyed the riffs, and it did get me into this like very hypnotic space. So I think from there you can just do some small evolutions, take some Foley, take some little, sometimes I'll just go out with a field recorder and just record the air wherever I am, and just use that air and really roll the low end, because you always get low end because it's wind and whatever's going on. And then just use that as a layer and experiment with getting texture by adding that, or something slow, maybe some slow evolving automations, like a filter that just opens very, very gradually over some like noise textures. Again, I really want to hear little tiny things, especially to play more with the stereo space, right? So you could have a lot of things, and hitting a lamppost, that's cool. But I think like more like longer noise textures is what I'm talking about, rather than like impacts, right? Just things to give you a story.
If you like freeware, there's actually something that was released and sort of captured the news a little bit this week. Kia put out a synth that is a very monophonic subtractive synthesizer. It's free, and it actually has a huge component in it, which is Foley noises, because their main goal with it, as well as just promoting Kia, because car companies, was that they wanted to create the sounds for their electric cars with it.
Oh,
So obviously it's a focus on sort of very a mixture of both organic and mechanical. So that of sort of dynamic engine sounds, but it actually has a lot of other stuff in it, like bird sounds and
well,
rain and
Natty,
whatever
Natty,
else.
you're spoiling it, because the new segment that I'm going to start this week, I was going to talk about that. So gosh darn it.
Well, I look forward to seeing you play with it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to start doing some things in the show. We're going to break it up every now and then and just show some cool tips and tricks. But then next up, we have another favorite. Some of you may remember Josh 000. So Josh is trippy as hell, because Josh just started producing like 3 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago last time he was on here, and he played a track on here that just wowed everyone. So I'm assuming that he's now maturing as a producer in his third week. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing what you got, Josh. So this is called Dancing Forever. Crazy. Josh, I'm such a big fan. I can't believe you. Like, it took me probably like, I don't know, at least like 6 months to a year maybe to get this good. I don't even know. Maybe I'm overestimating myself, but I'm just really impressed because Josh is telling us in the chat that he has no musical background whatsoever. And it blows me away because he's got a really good understanding, not only of arrangement, which is not easy to learn when you've never arranged anything, but of space and tension. You know, I think that most new producers I hear have the mistake of adding too much because it's like finger painting. You just discover that, whoa, I can do this, and then you just do everything. So I think it's really like mature restraint. What you're doing, Josh. So, oh, hey.
What up?
We got Jim in the house. Jim, you just missed Josh, Mr. Producing for 3 weeks, wonder kid of the channel. Big ups. Wow. So yeah, Josh, really high praise from me to you because honestly, like for 3 weeks, this is incredible. And the sounds that you're choosing, they're really, really like well chosen and they fit really well together. I agree with Imagine that you should add a little bit of reverb to the hats. And I think that now that you have really good elements sitting in the sonic space as far as like balance, try playing with stereo a little bit more. Try starting to play with panning effects and automation and everything like that. But yeah, I think all I can say is just keep doing it. It's hard to even give you feedback because I even hear an improvement over last week. Your stuff is more in key and it's progressing really fast. What do you think, Natty?
I mean, someone said, Peter in chat said that it reminds him of Tetra. Or Tetra? Or
Otech. Otech? I think that's what it is.
Anyway, some of his work in particular is made on modular. And that means that obviously when you make modular music, you're spending a lot of time looping things and processing things and tweaking things one variable at a time because you only have so many fingers and hands effectively to manipulate a sound with. I mean, with a track like this, obviously you want to keep that mellow vibe going where it's sort of focused on the sparser elements. But that does mean that over time you're going to have to experiment a bit. I mean, that wibbly wobbly lead, which in itself, in its first instance, sounds kind of neat. But as it gets going, because it's playing the exact same way every time, it becomes too predictable. So you could do some really little things, change the glide time, change how the attack and the decay on your ADR-SAR envelopes comes in and out, so that it gives it the same sort of breathing effect that everything else comes in. outtech her. Thanks, Barrett.
Yeah, I was the closest, I think. I win. Woo!
The other thing would be your breathing sounds. It would be one trick you could do to help increase the sort of hypnotic aspect of that would be to effectively reverse the sample occasionally and lead into itself. And you can do this with the pure sample of itself. You could do it with the reverb tail, do the reverse reverb trick. There's like all sorts of little cool fun devices that allow you to effectively continue with this whole, we're going to be a progressive stretched out arrangement, but still keep that flow and tension moving. Obviously, that's one of the really hard bits about producing, because there are a million possible things you can do, and it's deciding which ones to spend your time on, focusing on actually developing those techniques. So, I mean, I look forward to seeing where you go next with this sort of aesthetic.
Yeah, me too. So I want to give a big warm welcome to Unity of Noise. I think you just had an epic morning, and I hope we can hear you, because I didn't really hear you wrestling around, so I don't know if you're just muted, but you want to say something? Yeah, you're muted. I'm not getting any audio from... It's not coming through either. You should check your settings in the browser somehow. I don't know what's going on. All right, well, I'll just let you tweak some settings and figure out the audio. And in the meantime, I guess we can type. But yeah, we were talking about Unity of Noise before. He's going to be starting a new show on Sundays. Hey. There you are. Hey.
I actually heard that song, just so you know.
Oh, froze. Uh-oh. We lost him. Okay, he'll be back in a second. He lives in the mountains. There he is.
Hey!
I'm like, I don't know what I hit, and then all of a sudden everything just went away. I was like, oh. Anyway, I heard that song though. Not to just chime in with two seconds, but I did hit. I was actually watching the stream while I was trying to do the couple things I had to get done real quick. I just got home from the mountain. Everybody, I went to epic snowboarding morning. We got a lot of snow last night, so it was super fun. But anyway,
nice.
I really dug that song. This was the same dude that's only been producing like 2-3 weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like I only had one thing that I really heard that kind of tossed me as far as it being an early producer's track was the dissonance of those early chords was a little too clashy for me. Like, it wasn't bad, but it was just like there were certain parts where it was like I got that little like irky kind of feeling, you know? But overall, I actually thought it was really, really great. I really enjoyed the whole vibe of the whole thing, and I feel like it definitely could have evolved a little bit more. But for being somebody who's only been producing for 3 weeks, I don't have many complaints for that at all.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you. I love how bassy your mic sounds. You got that like warm radio announcer voice. So maybe tell people a little bit, what can they expect from Sampling Sundays?
Doggo.
Oh, yeah. So every Sunday I do a Sampling Sundays, which basically means that I usually get samples through my community. We might work on getting some samples through the EDMP community as well. But basically what I do is I try to get samples from anybody, and they can be literally anything, and then I'll make a song out of it, or try to help people learn how to manipulate samples a little bit more. It kind of depends on the moment. Last couple of times I've done it, I ended up creating these like crazy, like industrial kind of like rock tunes. And last Sampling Sunday, I think it was last Sampling Sunday. I had somebody send me an album of farts. Not joking at all. You can buy his album. It's all farts. It's like 23 freaking tracks of farts, and you can buy his album on Bandcamp. And yeah, I ended up making this crazy industrial metal song out of them. It was bananas, but everybody was blown away at like what I took that sound and like created these like melodic-y like sounds out of them with like glitches and all kinds of other stuff. So it was super fun. So Sampling Sundays is always kind of a toss-up. We grab fun sounds and we just try to like figure out what we can do with them in a short span of time. It's also like an exercise. Like, what can you do in the moment without overthinking things? You know what I mean? Just go with whatever's happening in the moment, you know? So it's really fun.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super looking forward to that. Especially, I know that we have a lot of people that are on in North American time and they're at work and stuff, so they just it's good to have somebody just rep in. And I really love what you do, and I think you're super diverse. So I'm really yeah. It's gonna be
Carl
fun.
Boots.
Well, welcome to Team LBC. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. Nathaniel, hello, by the way, officially. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you too, Jim.
I like somebody put in the chat, everyone was blown away. That was great.
Amazing.
It only took 4 streams for us to get to the fart jokes.
It's like, yeah, it takes just a few steps to get there. All right, so the queue is a little bunged up. I think some people put their name and then didn't put a link, and vice versa. So I think the next one up is going to be hard shifters. So I think hard shifters is submitted before, right? This was the hard style guy. I don't know. It's good to have you anyways. This is called Time. All right. the Hans Zimmer remix definitely got a huge reaction from the chat here. So definitely some feel good vibes, and it is kind of always going to be a nice feeling when you're remixing the mega emotive Hollywood studio guy. For me, I just want to say right off the bat, I really loved the first half of it, and then the second half of it seemed like it was just the first half looping. So I think that you need to create some more variation, because the biggest thing for me was like I really enjoyed it, and then I wanted something else to happen, and I wanted something to go on. So that's my feedback off the top. Jim, welcome. Why don't you jump in first?
Well, I think for me, like, it was very much the same thing. I felt like it was a really good start, and then it kind of trailed off. Like, it got just a little too repetitive at the end, really. The other thing is I felt like I never really heard, let's call it the drop, right? I never just didn't hear that enough. Like, it was so much build up to a pause, to another build up, to a pause, to a drop that was really short. And it was like, give me more, like if you're going to build me up that much in a song, like give me some time to just lock into that drop and just super vibe out on it for a little while. Like it doesn't have to be super long, but just give me a little more time. Like it just seemed like it kind of died out too fast. So yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Natty?
And I think for me, at least, when it comes to remixes like this, you played it a little bit too faithfully. I mean, I think that ties in a bit to your comment there, Jim, about how you wanted more of the drop. Well, that would be one way to really spin a track of this sort up. The Time as the original piece is very build-up focused. The build-up is the point. And you have to keep fleshing that out a bit, I think, to turn it from this is a cinematic track where it's got a be constant escalation to match what is happening on the screen, to this is a club track. Everyone needs to go and headbang to it. And you have to then take different considerations into account when it comes to arranging it. So, I mean, I think that one way to do it would be to effectively completely riff on the second half. Miss notes out, add more notes in, go really crazy with your sound design, just get really ambitious with it. If you want, you can start faithfully because that's the hook. This is a track I know. And then you can throw everyone's expectations out the water and say, but no, it isn't. Ha 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 ha.
Can we just clip that right there? Can we just clip that little moment? But no, it isn't. Ha 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 ha. That was awesome. Hey, Alicia, I think you're muted.
Check. There. Sorry about that. So next up we have our very own Lysol, aka Aerosol. I'm really psyched to have his song in the queue. Just going to give him huge shouts out. He's an awesome admin. He codes a lot of the bots and he makes really crazy music. So this is called Song 2. Okay. Whoa, some fire stuff as usual from Lysol, aka Aerosol. So, yeah, first of all, I just want to thank you, Lysol, because when you make this style, it's really somehow still soft. Like it's crazy. It's the hardest tear out stuff, but you've managed to tame that really resonant high end that some of this style of producers have. So usually, like there's times when I listen to this and I just like, oh, I feel like in pain. Like this is ripping my eardrums, and not in a good way. But you have this really nice like roundness to your low end and this cleanness to your high end that isn't piercing. So good job on that. I really was able to enjoy the drop and enjoy the whole thing without feeling in pain. And so I really like that the space, and I think your compression is really solid. So that's all I got to say about that. Natty?
I think that for this sort of track, the way it's going, it sort of makes me feel like I'm some sort of classy gangster, and that's really cool. I'd actually like to see. I mean, this is kind of the inverse to a feedback I had in one of the previous streams where I wanted more of the choir. In this one, I feel like it would actually do better with a little bit less of the choir. Because of the way the choir is sort of all vowel sounds and stuff, it's almost a little bit cliche. But it doesn't have to be. I think it would just be a case of changing your emphasis, moving back towards your gnarlier bass sounds a little bit more, giving them a little bit more room to change the tone of the conversation, as it were. So it's just not just the constant o thing going on. It gives that stuff more chance to shine in its own sections and gives your nastier wubs the more chance to do their thing.
Yeah. What do you think, Jim?
I thought it was great. I do agree very much with Nathaniel on that one. And I actually agree with Alicia too. On both ends, like I feel like the overall sound of the track was really great. But with Nathaniel's point of just like moving some stuff around a little bit more and whatever, I thought it was totally spot on. So I'm just in agreement with everyone here.
Nice one. Okay, so let's just. I mean, it was dope. Really, not much to say except I think make it longer. You know, it's only like a minute 19 seconds, so I think you can just keep going and come up with another drop with different syncopation. I think too many times I hear people design a really well crafted drop like that and then just repeat it. So I would just say like, don't do that, because
one of the easiest things, as a simple tip, the easiest things that I do coming from a drummer's perspective. When you do that second drop, you could literally copy and paste most of the parts and make it almost exactly the same. But when you switch that beat up quite a bit, like if you do something that's like halftime of your halftime, so it's like extremely slow, or even double it up, since it's a dubstep track, you could get away with going drum and bass tempo on that. Like those little changes like that, even for 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever, will make the track feel like it's doing something totally different. And yet you're really not changing it all that much. So that could be just a fun way to kind of dive into a second version or second half of that song without having it be, terribly long. So
good advice. Next up, we got one of our other regular favorites, Imagine. So always a pleasure. This track is called Inside My Head, Rough Mix.
Is there more that I can say before we hang up for the night? You say you need to contemplate if you still feel the same as I just called to make amends, but the static on the other end. Keep me in the dark, turn off the light, shutting me down, I don't wanna fight. Try to make peace, put out the fire, but you just wanna gaslight. You could start a war inside my head. Now perfect, never was. I make mistakes left and right, but I'm saying sorry, cause I know I messed up, I apologize. I called again to make amends, but you're quiet on the other end. Keep me in the dark, turn off the lights, shutting me down, I don't wanna fight. Try to make peace, put out the fire, but you just wanna gaslight. You just wanna gaslight.
You just wanna gaslight.
You could start a war inside my head. Now I'm overthinking everything, things I never said. Yeah, you could start a war inside my head. You manipulate me to get your revenge. You could start a war inside my head. Now I'm overthinking everything, things I never said. Yeah, you could start a war inside my head. You manipulate me to get your revenge. I just called to make amends, but the static on the other end. Keep me in the dark, turn off the lights, shutting me down, I don't wanna fight. Try to make peace, put out the fire, but you just wanna gaslight. So is there more that I can say before you go and end the line? You say you need to contemplate if you'll give us another try. I just wanna make amends, but all I hear is silence. Admitting my wrongs to make it right. Thought we could talk, what's in your mind? You'd rather play games, I'd rather play nice. You just wanna gaslight. You could start a war inside my head. Now I'm overthinking everything, things I never said. Yeah, you could start a war inside my head. You manipulate me to get your revenge.
Woo! Just such heaters, like all the time from this Imagine. What is going on with you? Tell us a bit about yourself in the chat if you can. Like, where are you from? How long have you been producing? I need to know a little bit more of your story, because this is super, like, everything you do is very well balanced, very like polished and smooth. My only thing that I would do, like, and by the way, I love the breakdown. The breakdown kind of gave me chills. It was just very perfectly executed. It was expected in a comfortable way, but I think the space was still really, really nice. I would have loved to hear like some little mid to low percussion fills in the second half, just to change it up. Like when it's like this, like it would kind of go like you know,
And say before you go and end the line.
yeah, you like my
And some cowbell.
vocal toms? More cowbell, definitely more cowbell. Imagine says I'm an industry plant. Well, that explains everything. Thank you so much for. We must be so popular if we're getting industry plants already on our stream. So yeah, Jim, how'd you feel about that?
I mean, I loved it. I was a top 40 DJ for those of a lot of people don't know. I was a top 40 DJ for a very, very long time. I used to just play pop, hip hop clubs, stuff like that, and I would have played that track every night of the week, legitimately. Like that was fantastic. I totally agree with you in that like breakdown bridge type section. Drop that snare out, give us some just like random tom hits or whatever in there to kind of make it feel a little more broken away from the rest of the song. But I mean, outside of that, the bass line was fantastic. The groove was just beautiful. Like I loved that altogether. Like I'm gonna request that whoever it was, who was it that posted this track? Sorry,
Imagine.
With a
Imagine
V.
if you can post that so we can download it and listen to it on our own. That'd be awesome.
Nice. Don't slide in his DMs.
I know, right? I loved it. I loved it. So Nathaniel.
I think for me, the one thing I would change about the overall composition, have some sections bleed into each other a little bit more. Because one of the things, it's really handy, I think, for DJing, where you have this really segmented, clear structure. But it actually works more on repeat listening if sometimes, not all the sections, but some of them can just have a little bit more bleed into each other. So it improves the cohesion and the sort of the journey of the track. The other thing would mean, I asked about the vocals, and Imagine says, so this is from a royalty free pack, saving up for a vocalist to sing on this. The hard part with that is if they hear the vocals as they are now, it may end up with the case that they might not be able to think of anything better for the overall lyricism of the track, because you've obviously sculpted the entire track around how it's written so far. So you might end up actually being better if you do get someone else to sing on it, mainly focusing on having them as some sort of like a duet partner for your royalty-free singer, rather than doing an entirely brand new top line. So, maybe ask them to write up a response verse so that you can have your first verse do one thing in the story and your second verse do a different thing. And then you can also do things with the stereo field when your chorus is, because right now it's very single channel. And with another voice in the mix, you can then start to broaden the palette out a bit, which is a massive opportunity to really get that chorus to not just be groovy, but also big sounding.
Very, very wise words, my friends.
Yep, that was great.
Yeah, stoked to be here. Shouts out to Imagine for just a fabulous piece of music. That was so much fun. So next up, we got my dog, Ozan. Shouts out to Ozan, one of my students. I'm interested to hear what he's been working on. This is a track called Voyager.
But every day your feelings, your emotions are different, you know. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Charles, it's so nice to meet you.
really, really cool work from Ozan, aka Ladas, Pilates, I don't know.
It's gonna be a running gag on this show, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it was really awesome stuff. Great reaction from the chat. So congratulations. And I agree. I think the sense of space in this is really, and the playing with the stereo field makes this really unique. You know, it's kind of got this chill retro vibe, but at the same time, the interesting panning choices make it feel modern to me. One thing that I would say, I think that with your hi-hats specifically, there's a slight bit mechanical that I think is out of place with how kind of like funky and groovy the rest of it is. And I know that you're varying the velocity a bit, but something to think about might be swapping out, like right now, sometimes it sounds like you're using one hi-hat and it's going tss. So you could actually get 2 or 3 hi-hat samples that are really similar, but not the same. And usually if you go into most sample packs and there's like 25 hi-hats, you kind of just go through them with the arrow keys. That's what I do. And just wait till you kind of get 2 or 3 that you're just like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you'll notice that when you put them in, it'll go like it'll just sound a little bit more real because they're just slightly different. So that could be a trick maybe to just get it, and maybe as well, just maybe not unquantizing it totally, but shifting it so it's like a little bit late, so it kind of grooves with that really, really funky bass line. So that, and then I love the way that you get texture in the space when you have those delays and those vocals. I think that it's like the perfect place there. But in the intro, I would love to have a texture or some kind of noise or some kind of space like that, because it feels a little bit empty to me. But super great work. Everybody's really loving it. I'm going to pass it over to Natty.
So I think the vibe was solid and the general choicing and layering, perfect, really good use of transitions. So it was very, very fluid. I think that this is going to sound weird. It was a little bit long. I feel like for a track like this, you want to have it sort of a length that you can get into that hypnotic state. But if you want people to keep listening, play it again a couple of times, you should think about leaving them wanting more. And to do that, it means cutting back a little bit on saying, oh, this is, exactly how long it needs before I get bored. And saying, well, can I pull it back just a little bit before that point so that then they want to start the journey all over again? Obviously, I know in this day and age, you don't want to say to only the TikTok generation with a 30-second attention span, because, that's not actually very artistic. It's just, so I don't mean like cut it all down so it's only a 2.5 minute track or whatever, but just really think about how much you need to get the point across and then stop it there.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. So what do you, this is all good advice. I just want to shout out from the chat. They're mentioning the EXO sample manager is really great for finding similar sounding samples because it groups them together based on sound. I keep meaning to pick that up because I see other people using it and it looks so cool. Like it's just such a more visual way to deal with your sample library. Jim, have you tried that? You're muted. You're muted again. I don't know why. All right. I think he's got a bit of a connection thing today. All right. He's going to come back. All right. Well, I still can't hear you.
And there we are.
There we are.
I always forget to change the frickin' thing.
Technology.
I was saying that it was funny the way that you brought that up with the sample manager, because over the last week I've literally been trying out a bunch of different sample managers. So being a sample type person, I have 290,319 samples to be exact now.
Oh my God.
Yes, I have been collecting samples and I'm old. I'm sorry, everybody. I've been collecting samples for 20 years, so, it's a thing.
Me too.
Right. So that, and I'm going to segue into the fact that I'm still old, so I'm going to date myself very much so here. Let's go back to the DJ Shadow days. And that's what this song reminded me of. It reminded me so much of early DJ Shadow, and I'm such a friggin' huge fan of that guy. So that being said, I feel like you could actually learn a lot from listening to what he did. He was so good at creating these trancey, and I don't mean trance as a style of music, I mean songs that put you in a trance, but they were like hip hop, trip hop, kind of all over the place. And everything was sample based and everything was built off of records. And he would put you into these states, but managed to keep your attention the entire time, which is a huge point that Nathaniel brought up. that's what I think made the song feel a little bit long, was that you started to kind of lose the attention span. It wasn't really enough shifting and changing to make me go, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. Like, I'm still interested in this, you know? But that being said, I really love the ARPs. I really thought that the flow of everything was really good. It just felt a little long in the end, like I just touched on. I actually made the same point on the hi-hats with Alicia. I thought that was exactly the same thing there. And then the only thing for me mainly was I felt like the vocals, in certain parts, the vocals could get more buried inside the effects and a little bigger and a little more spacey. And that, again, goes back to that DJ Shadow type stuff, you know? So there you go.
That is like the highest compliment. I could only wish that someone would ever compare me to DJ Shadow. Like, wow. So good job.
I love that guy.
Me
Everyone's
too.
bringing the top-notch tunes again tonight.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
the
for real.
quality really impresses me. There's so many of you out there. Sometimes I just trip out thinking, like, at any given moment in the world, how many people are making music right now, and just like the numbers of
Right.
that. So crazy. Next up, we have Collaxis. Collaxis was a guest on Print My Live, and Collaxis is going to present a track called Ahead. Really stoked to hear what you got. That's some nice banging stuff from our homie Collaxis. Shouts out. So first off, yeah, I really like what you do with your sound. I think that the guitar that you add to all the super synthesized elements gives it some life. Now, that being said, the guitar was way too much in the back for me. And for sometimes, like, it almost gave me this feeling like it was out of phase. It just had that weird, like, kind of like that backwards feeling. And that's like, it's the hardest thing for me to always grasp. And I'm not always sure, but I just had this hollow feeling that reminded me of that. So it could just be that it's too far back in the mix, because the way that synth bass is hitting me, I really want it to like punch me in the chest. And then I want the guitar to like firmly kind of like pulse out over that. And it's sort of like sitting back. I don't know. Do you know what I mean, Jim? It's like, what exactly am I hearing?
No, I know exactly what you mean, and it really is that. It just sounds like it's getting buried by a few other things. Phasing wise, it could be with, anytime you've got guitars and lots of synths and different types of synths, you're going to have so many competing frequencies there because they're all going to fall in the same little realm, So you got to kind of decide on what you're going to spread and maybe push out super hard to the left and right. Let's call it 2 guitar tracks, right? That'll be a nice stereo spread, and then allow the synths to kind of sit in the middle, or vice versa. Try to push the synths out a little bit and let maybe just one guitar kind of sit up in the middle. But you really have to play with like that choice of which element do you want to be the more like forefront type sound,
Yeah, exactly. That's basically my whole feeling on that track. Was I just kept wanting that guitar to be more, because it's just such a cool element. Like and it gives it funk.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, I felt like the drums in general could just be a little better glued together. The kick was definitely like, and I don't mean this in a harsh way, but the kick was just really too loud. Like when the drop would come in, it sounded good, but the kick was just way on top of everything. So it was the problem when you do that is that's what pulls your attention, and it pulls your attention away from the whole song when all you hear is this slapping kick, it's like pounding you in the frickin' forehead, So my only suggestion there would be maybe take the kick down a little bit, but also double check your drum bus and that you've got just a good amount of compression, kind of leveling out all the drums and making sure that they're just all really nice and cohesive. I know it's electronic and people don't look at it like a drum kit, but you really need to. You need to sit down and look at it as if you played all these things on an analog drum kit, and you need to somehow make them sound like they are one cohesive piece in the song.
Definitely. I think that because a lot of people now come into this, like it used to be like if you were an engineer and you were making beats, like you kind of just had to be in an analog studio like what you have.
Right.
And nowadays so many people kind of skip that part, and I don't think it occurs to them that like they need to glue that together. And that's kind of like the old school way that they explain it at audio school. Like, what's the point of using a send? Well, with a drum kit, sometimes you want it to sound like it's in the same room, so you send little bits of all the drums to this one reverb, and then you get that cohesion. Right.
And that's huge in the electronic world too, because like when you want to have that room sound, as we call it in the analog world, when you're putting a bunch of electronic sounds together that are super dry, well, how do you make all these random super dry sounds that come from, let's say, 10 different sample packs sound like one drum set? Put them all together, put a compressor on the drum bus so they're all going to the same compressor, then send that just a touch, not a lot, but just a touch to one reverb sound, and it'll sound like the whole drums were recorded in the same room. It's a really, really great glue compressor, as somebody's saying in the chat. In Ableton, the glue compressor is really good. In Ableton, if you're using Logic, even just the stock Logic compressor is fantastic. But outside of that, just the rest of my feedback. I thought the lead was super great. I loved how you changed it. It was kind of long in parts, and then you tightened it up in other parts to add some things to differentiate from it just being this repetitive sound the whole time. I thought that was super fun. And then the only thing else I had was the kick. After the first drop, you had a second kick come in, and it was really boxy. So watch that like 300 to 500 realm in the kick drum, and it'll get real boxy in there. A lot of times you could just EQ that out a little bit, and it'll make that kick have a little more like low end thump to it versus that like kind of boxy, chesty type sound.
Yeah, super good tips. Natty, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything everyone said so far. I mean, one of the chat members, Carol Boop, said the first drop reminded them of Yasutaka Nakata, Japanese producer. I think that a good precedent there, if you're going to explore bringing the guitar forward, making everything just a little bit more punchy. There's a song by Kiari Pamu Pamu or whatever it is, and Charlie XCX is on there too. It's called Growing Crazy or something. I can't remember the exact title, but it's a really, really punchy, guitar-heavy mix-down. I think that'd be a good sort of case study to have a look at how you might bring that out and balance all the elements. The other thing is when you start going ham in the third, sort of the outro drop, I'd love to see that pulled forward further. Like, because you got the second drop, which is kind of really similar to your first one, and I feel like you should swap them out, and then, so you can get a really hype section right in the middle of your track there. And then somehow find a way to sort of find the middle ground for your outro, have the climax come earlier, and then sort of combine the best of both worlds for the outro closing act.
Definitely. Kamadi's up next, but they're replacing their link, so I'm going to just skip to the next one, which is Cookie. Welcome back. Got a track this week called Ninja Monkey. Always very creative with the artwork and all the other things too. It's very funny. I'll put it up on the screen in a second. But yeah, on Audius too. And big shouts out to Audius. They are going to start coming in and being a part of this with us as well. We love them. And I'm sure the quality of their audio is really great. So I'm not dissing SoundCloud, but just saying Audius does not compress, bro. Got that artwork up. That's the Ninja Monkey. Amazing, epic concept. I was only hearing the ninja. I was like, oh, that's why right at the end. So definitely a cool effort. I really like the distorted kind of bass airy thing, but for some reason it seems to like disappear the snare to me or something like that. I don't know if maybe that like that like static thing is just clashing, and maybe you need to like do some side chaining. But I just found that like when that was kicking in, it was hard for me. Like it wasn't. I wanted like a sharp crack or something. I wanted it to be like something like that. So it could be the sound as well. Maybe adding like a layer. Yeah. Basically, that's my thoughts. Is I just really want that snare kind of. Natty?
I think the track sounds a little impatient on itself. Like before we get to the sort of all the funky little changes, it doesn't really give us enough time to actually get used to the really playing the melody straight. Like immediately within the first bar, it goes dun 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 dun, and then it pauses, and then we get the next note syncopated off the. So you change the pattern immediately, but with this sort of progressive track, you don't need to do it that fast. You can ease into every change. Like it feels like you're just throwing all these elements at us really quickly. But we've barely gotten used to the last ones before you've done so we don't really recognize that there's a rule change so much as you've established that the rules are constantly in flux, which for a techno track is a little bit difficult to handle. It would make it kind of hard for people to stay in that zone of this is a techno track, I'm just sort of vibing. The other thing would be with your sort of that specific sound, the sort of it's like a keto or something. I can't remember the name of the it's like
Koto?
Koto, that was it.
Yeah.
It's like a koto sort of sound. The one thing with the koto is it's a very, very timbral instrument. Like, it doesn't have that many notes accessible to it at any one time, but to make up for that, there's a lot more dynamics in the way that it strings reverberate and change. You can sort of pluck it almost like a fiddle or cello or any sort of other. It's not really like a guitar. It's much closer to the sort of traditional orchestral instruments. So maybe playing around with the... you could use sort of delays or gates to sort of... And even how you your reverb to sort of give it a longer sort of more stuttery sort of effect. Granular synthesis might actually be worth playing about with there actually. To sort of just, again, you've got all these other organic sounds. It's just sort of improving the sort of natural vibe that synth presents.
Good thoughts. Jim?
Yeah. I had a few. So first, the stabs that the melody that Nathaniel was talking about, dun 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 dun, I just felt like they were dry. Two things. One, maybe you could add delay. They do have already a slightly off time rhythm to them, so a standard like quarter note or even half note delay would add some movement to that and not make it feel so static. The other thing you could do is instead of dun 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 dun, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you could do dun 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 dun, like put the little like trip tail in the end, like there, you know, help just kind of shift some things up a little bit. The other thing that I thought of was a couple of fills. So again, as there's a lot of drum perspective. You're talking to a drummer, so you're gonna get a lot of drum perspective from me. There's certain parts in the song where I just felt like you could use a little like drum fill or something to let it happen. That way the next part coming in is a little more, let's say, expected. There's just certain parts where things would just drop out. And for me, I was just like, okay, why did that sound just change right now, you know? So like just some detail work really at the end of the day. But overall, I mean, I thought I had a pretty good feel. I could dive into the mix a whole bunch, but I don't think that's really necessary at this point. I think you should just work more on getting everything to be a little more cohesive and a little more fluid, and then start really diving into mixing later on.
Yeah, true. I think sometimes people get so caught up with one aspect, they forget about the other to the end. And I think the best result personally for me is to do a little bit at a time and, you know, not just get too stuck on either the arrangement or the mix. Maybe like it helps also sometimes if your ears get tired from mixing, you know, it's just don't just do mixing all day. Spend part of the time focusing on that and part of the time just playing with arrangement, I think.
I mean, for me, like, I agree, and I'm sure Nathaniel does too. Like, for me, like, I mix as I go, don't get me wrong. When it comes to, like, electronic music, I definitely will mix as I go. But that is never, ever, ever a final mix for me, because usually by the time I've spent 3 hours working on something and I've been kind of mixing it the whole entire time, when I come back and listen to it the next day and I listen to it with a set of mixing ears specifically, I'm just like cringing the whole damn time. You know what I mean? Because you're so worn out. You think things sound good because you've been listening to it for 3 or 4 hours. Of course it's going to sound good to you, you know, but people need to learn, like, just focus on writing, focus on being creative, enjoy writing your song and having fun with it. Walk away from it for a day or two. Come back with nothing but mixing in mind, and then mix your song. You will always get better results that way.
Yes.
Or I'll think it sounds bad, and then come back and think, it only needs a little bit of change here or there, not a complete overhaul.
Right.
Yeah, you could get those like mood crashes at the end of the day, like, oh my God, what have I done? I'm wasting my life. back in the day, we call it the should have been a lawyer moment, you know? You just like, oh no, what am I doing? So it's
should
okay.
have been a lawyer.
Yeah, should have been a lawyer.
Guess for me, that'd be the
doctor.
should have been an architect one.
You are an architect, Nathaniel. You are a sound architect. And you're literally an architect as well, so that's pretty badass.
Not quite. I'm not actually legally allowed to call myself one.
You're inspired by architecture.
Right.
All right, next up we got Kamadi Music, a track called Gimme That.
Give me that. Give me that. Give me that.
Right. That's a magical little deep in the forest sound that really reminded me of outdoor festivals for personally, especially like California or BC, just at that moment when you're like weaving through the trees and you start hearing something and like really nice deep sounds. I think you've got a lot of nice lows and you've got that really crisp high arp and stuff. Maybe, and the mids are really good when they come in with the little bass thing, but I think that your sub, maybe you could try doing some top end small distortion to like round it out at the top, and then you can do something like band pass that or like notch it and sweep it and just get this little like almost like you're like carving out with metal, like a vroom, like kind of over top of that really nice sub and just really subtly. So I'm not talking about making like a tear out bass, just like the same deep sub that you have, but just like that little edge over top of it would be really nice. I also think that the ARP itself, I like the highs in it, but there's moments where they're a little like dancing with being a little piercing. So something I can suggest when you have a lot of slightly different pitches is always going to be dynamic EQ, because when you use dynamic EQ, you be lazy, right? You don't have to sit there and like ride the different notes. You can just tell it, hey, only pull this frequency down when it exceeds a threshold. And so if you've never used a dynamic EQ, it kind of follows a lot of the principles of compression, but interesting trivia, it's actually expansion. So TDR Nova, we talk about it a lot because we love free plugins. So that would be the one that I would recommend is that one for trying it out for free. You can also do some dynamic EQ on FabFilter, but that costs money. Not everyone has money, so I always like to suggest a free alternative. And then the last thing on my side would be, I think that some of your basses could glue together a little bit better. There's a couple of them that are really strong and make it really nice kind of mid-range, and then there's others that seem a little bit flatter. So I think that maybe just putting them all in a bus together if they're not already, and processing on that bus, and maybe doing some compression, like multi-band compression. That's something I do. If I'm using a lot of different basses, I use multi-band compression, and then I'll compress just the sub so that the sub is always even if it's like a different bass patch playing. So sometimes that's what I do to smooth it out. Jim?
Yeah, that was a lot of really good points. Another really great sorry, I swallowed down the wrong pipe here. Another really great EQ, multiband EQ is the C6 from Waves, which is 90% of the time. It's always $29. So although it's not free, that's definitely not breaking the bank at the end of the day. But that one I use constantly. I'm always using that multiband all the time. My notes. My biggest thing with this track that I heard, and I wanted this so bad. The track comes in and there's that first little deep vocal drop that happens. It says I don't know what exactly it was saying, but it says something, and then that kind of drop happens. I really wanted to hear this just like dirty, distorted 808 sound and nothing else right there. Like, I would have got full on stink face. I would have been like, oh, like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was expecting to hear. And not that it was bad, but I just feel like that would have really set that apart from everything. Like, that would have kind of put the track like up into another notch, another level. That would have just made things really cool. My second note, snare hits. Maybe every 2 bars or 4 bars. It depends on what you feel like, but there could just be this one end snare hit on the end of a line where you could just toss like a reverb on it. So it's just to add some more space and something a little different. I 100% agree with the top end on the ARP thing. That was the only thing that really bothered me about the ARP thing. I thought it sounded really cool, but there was just parts where it was like a little shrill. And I'm telling you right now, you're talking to a drummer who I have a hard time with top end hearing. Legitimately, I do, because I've been playing with cymbals my entire life. So if I'm hearing harshness in something at the top end, it's telling you it's pretty harsh. And then overall, at the end of the day, though, just a touch more variety. I didn't know if this track was a little more aimed at just being like a hip-hop track, like you could put an MC over top of it, so it just needed subtle changes, or if you were going for something a little more instrumental. It's one of those tracks that it could go either way very, very, very easily. So really well done. Overall, though, I thought it was really, really great. Just a couple of points.
Nice. Natty?
I mean, I think that the whole is going to be an instrumental thing. If you're to add more changes to it, there was that sort of vocal. I can't, like, it's really hard to sort of. But I mean, one of the things I think you could do would be to
say to that, dude.
have it alternate between octaves. So you'd have it play at the original.
Is your
thing.
mic muted?
No, I can hear. I can hear.
And
it.
then,
Wait. Oh, hold on a sec. You're not muted, but it should be. No, it should be going through. I see you.
No,
that's weird.
Somebody said muted mic. That's
I know.
what
I
I'm
looked,
asking.
but it seems like you're going through. Say nothing's changed.
Hello?
Yeah.
I mean, you got your light going on. I can see your little green light popping up, so I think you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's but if you go down up to it, so you go one and then you go. I really wanted it to go down into the sort of the lower, the bassier region, acting as sort of an addition onto your sub. So just like because you got this really deep vibe going on, but you.
I I just want to point out that we've all beatboxed parts of songs today already. So
Yes.
I hope somebody clips. There's clips.
Just another thing you can expect from the ILBC channel is professional beatboxing.
Very professional.
But I mean, it would add to sort of the spacey vibe, and also, you know, if you can play about all your sounds in that way, where it doesn't have to stay in the lane that it currently sits. You can move it up and down, and that'll change the sense of the space.
Oh.
I'm sorry for the bird noise.
All right. Amazing.
Good vibe otherwise, actually, really.
Yeah, and definitely going to be a great festival tune. But I think especially for playing it out on a big system, you got to be careful that high end doesn't just like, because when you bring that into mastering too, you're going to be at the mercy of that as the loudest thing. You know, it's just going to like squish it in, and you're just going to get this like high end in your face. So
my headphones actually emphasize that region.
So do mine.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I mean, Jim was saying Jim's the drummer. I mean, if Jim says it's too high, it's too high.
Trust me, my ear doctor is awesome. He's always like, "So, how's your hearing?" And I'm like, it's good. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've been a rock drummer my whole life, so I started playing drums at around 14, and I from 14 to probably 30, I never wore earplugs, nor did I wear in-ear monitors. We were in a punk band, like we didn't give a shit about any of that crap.
Do not do this at home.
And I'm telling you, don't do it now.
Wear earplugs.
Yeah,
Always.
I have ways of adjusting my system to compensate for the lack of things that I cannot typically hear in mixes and stuff like that, and that's how I get away with it. But I'm telling you, if you don't have to do that, if you can save yourself now, do it, because
I mean, your
I'm
ears
43
are
and I'm paying for it, man. I'm 43 and I'm paying for it.
Yeah, and my thing, like, I would always get scared because I would go to play shows, and the level of the monitor of the person before me was like devastating. Like, I would just walk on stage and just like assault me, and I would turn it all the way down, and then the person after me would usually turn it back up, and I'm just kind of going,
right.
I don't
That's
know.
why I've been wearing 6 driver setup in-ear monitors for, well, see, I'm 43. I started wearing them right around 29, 30 years old. So yeah, for like, even when I DJ, even a top 40 club, I would still wear in-ear monitors, and everybody thought it was weird for that. They're like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm saving the little hearing that I have left is what I'm doing. Like,
yeah. And then the thing is, like, you have all these crazy, like, purpose-built giant bass sound systems, like, especially in America. In Europe, you don't really have this as much because, let's be quite frank, I think the village roads are too narrow to hold the sound system trucks a lot of the times. I'm not even really totally kidding, because in America, they just drive these huge, like, trailers around with, like, the, like, you know, like, big shouts out to my friends, like, PK Sound, bass system, and it's like these stacks, and then you see these kids at the party like humping the speaker that are like face forward, just glued onto it, and I'm just like,
right.
Oh my God. So yeah, be careful, kids. Before we move on to the next one, I'm gonna just do a little mini segment called Plugin of the Week. So
nice.
Essentially, we are just going to talk about things. Nathaniel already kind of spilled the beans, but I know that some people joined. Yeah, God, why did you do this? So this week we're talking about, this is really, really weird. Kia, like, yet the people who make the cars, yes, decided to make a virtual instrument that is scientifically designed to inspire you. All right, so we're gonna get scientific here.
So wait, hold on a second. So should this be like the topic of sampling Sundays this week? This looks like a perfect candidate for
we're gonna
what
check
I should
it out.
Try to use.
We're gonna check it out real quick. And this, like, basically they are trying to expand from being just a car manufacturer to a brand that's about mobility. Let's look at this little pretentious whatever it is, and I think. Actually, wait, I think I have to actually open it in Safari 1 second, because this is the way I have it all looped up. So let me do this so we can all hang out and watch this scientifically inspiring thing together.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alicia has like 7 browsers running at the same time right now.
That's the only reason. Oh, okay.
Introducing Kia Movement, the world's first instrument that's scientifically designed to inspire you. A collaboration between renowned synth builder Arthur Jolie, De House Audio, and Kia. Created using the sounds of movement in nature, sounds that are proven to help trigger inspiration. And now movement is available to everyone. Download movement at kia.com and have inspiration at your fingertips.
Kia, movement that inspires.
And make sure you give us your social security number and your baby's firstborn and all this other shit.
Yeah, it's weird. And so definitely, I mean, we won't watch this whole thing. Apparently they have the story behind the instrument, but the TLDR, I mean, this person speculates, which I kind of agree, that maybe they were trying to come up with like sounds for their car, and then they were like, oh, let's do this. But it is a really, really cool thing. So it's free. So yeah, it does not come with a Kia as far as I know, but I downloaded it and I haven't really looked at it, but we're just going to load it up for like a hot second. And so
I don't know, man. I don't know. If it doesn't come with a car, I'm not sure I'm really down. Like, it should come with a car.
Okay, well, here's the interesting thing about it though. It's got this different, it basically has a sampler in it that has Foley, which is what Nathaniel was talking about when we were talking about texture. And with every sound, you have this very sort of analog synth. And actually, I will say these VCOs, like, they sound really, like, they do have a fat analog sound to them. Let me just see. We got this beach. And you see it's got this beach sound on it, and you can change it to like birds, wind, geyser. I don't know why it's spelled like that. Forest, water, thunder, and night. So obviously, it's a pretty simple synth, but to me, like, first unboxing, I guess that's what we're doing now. It seems very, very basic with just a Foley layer on top, but I could be wrong. And you know what? Hey, it's free. It's free. There's nothing wrong with free tools are cool. New tools are cool. New ways of getting inspired are also totally cool. So I don't know. Check this. I don't mean to advertise for Kia, certainly not, but it is a free plugin, and it's just something new to get inspired with. Because I think that sometimes the biggest thing I have with fellow producer friends is you do something cool and then you get stuck. You do it again and again and again. And a lot of my friends that play festivals, especially, they get on this perpetual loop of like just doing the formula. So this is just like, if you're stuck, if you're bored, maybe this strange Foley bed of effects will inspire you.
Also, the geyser thing is a UK English versus an American English spelling thing.
Oh. They spell geyser like that in the UK?
Yeah.
What? What is wrong with you people?
What is wrong with you? We invented your language.
I was going to say, I think it's us that's kind of messed up on that, because it was
totally
their
joking.
language first.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm scientifically inspired.
I will point this out to the chat. I got to point this out to the chat. I literally just downloaded this, or am currently downloading it right now, and it doesn't even ask for your email or anything, which I was actually really surprised by. I expected this to be a ploy for them to like get email addresses so they could like blast everybody about new Kia cars, but it didn't ask for anything. I just saw the link, hit download, and it started downloading. So hey, this is what I'm going to use this Sunday. I'm going to play with this on Sunday and see what we can create.
I just realized the forest is still going behind your talking.
It's helping inspire his speech.
Yeah, it's like you're talking
go.
to us from the middle of the forest after hours of meditating.
I mean, I actually do live in the forest. Like, legitimately, I do live on a mountain in the forest. So that was appropriate.
Hey, why not? All right. Thanks for waiting. You're listening to Feedback and Friends on ILBC TV. And just for those who don't know, ILBC is a really, really cool upcoming competition focused on live electronic performance. So you can check out our website, ilbc.tv, for more information on that. We're going to go to Green Hollow and a track called About You.
I could list 1,000 things. It keeps me
That was very lovely. I'm going to let Jim jump in first since he's our resident drum and bass freak. You're muted again. I don't know why. You're still muted. He's muted. I don't know why. Natty.
Yes.
All right, you can go
You
first.
got it? So, I mean, I think the overall drive and the atmosphere is really wonderful. For me, I think with this sort of track, I would have liked to hear the hats by themselves on occasion, because it feels like after the first sort of beat drivey section, the energy just drops completely out of it. And I don't think with this it needs to entirely for the... I mean, you had that sort of... it was like a 16-bar segment after the first sort of chorusy BE section, and then you go to the vocals get introduced, and I think there would be a good moment to have nothing but the vocals focus on there. But all the way up till then, we need to still sort of drive the track all the way up to that point to sort of keep people engaged. So I mean, keeping just the most bare minimal aspects of your percussion and drums there would help do that. The other thing would be that then as you pick back up again, it kind of just sort of does the same thing over again. It needs a little bit more minor alterations in your drums and percussions and your breaks. It's sort of just, again, keep it spicy. You know, obviously with this sort of liquid D&B, it's not meant to be in your face. But it doesn't mean you can't just vary up a little bit more just to, you know, it's not a long track, so it doesn't have to have huge amounts of variation. Just really, really teeny little things, extra syncopation here or there. Maybe some exaggeration on sidechain to sort of give it a more of a stuttery effect. I don't know. Jim, is your audio working?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
working again.
yay.
It's actually what it was my little cup here, my coffee. At one point in time, we were listening to the song, and I went, and you could hear it like really loudly. And I was like, oh, what an asshole! I just like totally drank.
No,
like, you know.
don't
So I-
worry. You know, because by the way, I mute you when it's playing, so you can hear
Oh, okay,
yourself
good.
because you're going through the room, but no one can hear you out there.
No, that's fine. So I muted myself because I didn't know and I didn't want to be that guy. But no, okay, that's good to know. So what I was saying was, yes, I actually really love the vibe of this track all in all. When I originally got into drum and bass, I was super into all the, you know, the classical, like neuro, like crazy over-the-top shit. But as my tastes evolved in the genre over the years, liquid became one of my favorites because it was so easy to just get lost inside. So I really love and respect this side of drum and bass in general. I'm not very good at writing it, but I love listening to it. So the biggest things that I heard were there was just some odd chords that had happened, and I'm not sure if they were more dissonant or if they were just kind of out of key for the song. But it was somewhere in the beginning of the song, right around after the first vocal drop had happened, where everything cut out. There was just some odd chords that I'd heard in there. Maybe it's just something to look into. And then there was certain parts of there was like a lead type sound that came in that also just sounded a little bit out of tune as well. Again, like some of this stuff could just be dissonance. It's hard for me to tell sometimes if it's really out of tune because we are, you know, listening to this over the internet. So, but overall, I actually thought the vibe of the whole track was really, really great. I love the vocal. I love the space. I definitely just felt like a little bit more variety. Not much, but just a couple of parts, like Nathaniel pointed out. Maybe drop out everything and just have the hats roll in, like things like that. But overall, I'd give it like, you know, a 90%. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, and I mean, liquid D&B is definitely like an old school thing. I used to play entire sets for this, and this kind of brings me back to like playing in clubs in Vienna, like till 7 a.m, and really good memories. I think the vocal, it was a little bit far back sometimes, and I mean, I'm not saying I don't like the reverb because I really love reverb, but I think something I often tell people with vocal production is like you can mix in a drier, sort of more close layer with a reverby layer, or you can even like EQ your reverb, and there's just ways of sort of controlling the balance of reverb and dry signal where you still get the super reverby effect, but it doesn't fall totally far into the back. And so one of the things is like having that layer where maybe like the vocal is like up close and whispery, and then, you know, put the reverb underneath it, put it around it. Sometimes I really go crazy with the reverb. Maybe I'll put it on a send and I'll do some panning effects just on the reverb as well. And that can be just a really dynamic way to add progression to your track. So I really just kind of I wanted to just hear the vocal a little bit stronger, not necessarily like drier, but just have that a little bit more forward because the bass is so rolling and the drums are so present. Like I don't want to lose that vocal in it. So shouts out.
Can I touch on that for a second,
please
Alicia?
do.
So another thing, and I don't mean to be the guy that's always promoting Waves, but being a guy that's worked with a lot of analog shit over the years, I tend to use a lot of their plugins. But they have another plugin called the Doubler, Waves Doubler. So another thing that you could do that would touch on what she was saying is you could take that vocal and literally just double the vocal down. So it's a second vocal track could be exactly the same, which would give you phasing issues if you left it alone. But if you take that Waves Doubler and throw it on the second track, what ends up is you have these 3 little dots you'll see on the plugin. You pull this middle one down, which is the main middle vocal. The other 2 is where the plugin itself has now split the vocal and stereo spread it. And that would actually, it makes it really fun to allow the main vocal to have just a touch of something on it, not too much, but you could add all your effects to that second vocal track, giving the vocal that nice big space that you want, while also allowing that main vocal to stay like right up in your grill, like right here to where it sounds very focused and very upfront in the mix. So just another tip.
Totally amazing. Next up, excited again. We got Aiden back in the chat, and we're going to listen to another track, I think maybe off the same Hype album. Last time we heard this kind of reggae sort of hybrid, really interesting mix. So I think, always a pleasant surprise. This one's called But I Just Wrote Our Love Song.
Sky's gone gray. Can you open up? Can you try to breathe? I've been pulling through, I'll be open for you. But still you turn away. You can fix the stay. You gave me the key to the door. Then you stood aside, didn't walk at all. I'm doing it for you. Might not be the place, but I want you to stay. So you gotta be true. Stick your head out the window. Feel the rhythm of the tempo. I don't wanna let you go. Please, baby, come back home. I keep checking my phone over and over and over again for you. I don't even have a contact picture for you. I asked everybody what they thought and they said it was false. How come you don't get it? Acting like I meant nothing at all. Don't you understand that what we had is something more to find? Blues on a bench waiting for a mail time. Don't you wanna think another thing can get inside your head? Let me in and let me have a look through it in the end. Stick your head out the window. Feel the rhythm of the tempo. I don't wanna let you go. Please, baby, come back home.
I think one thing I just got to say right off the bat, Aiden, is that you have achieved that mythical thing that everybody thinks they have but don't, which is like, oh, who do you sound like? Oh, I don't really sound like anyone. Nah, nah, nah. And usually like that is BS, but I can truthfully say that like you do have a really, really unique sound, and you're doing things like that. I just don't even, I'm like, how does he even think of that? And for me, the only thing I really wanted, and I almost want to remix this because I want it really badly after hearing it, is you have so many lovely little vocals, and like that big bass thing is really powerful. More moments of breathing where there's like nothing but your vocal and then maybe the sub, like the whole track just shrinks down to you just being like, oh, boom, right? And just like a silence breath. Here we are. It's beatbox night, clearly.
Are we getting all these clips? Because all these clips are great. These have got to go on the channel. These are awesome.
This is going to be our TikTok feed.
I think so. Maybe someone will make a beat just from all these clips tonight. But I think, it's just, I really want to hear like that breathing and that space just so we can appreciate the unique elements you have, because there are times like you had such lovely vocal riffs and there's so much percussion going on, and just having it shrink down and up, super, super cool moment. So maybe I will remix it. Jim?
I mean, I agree, actually. I thought the track was overall really cool. I felt like, and again, so I come from a very pop-oriented world, so take or leave some of the advice that I give. But that had a very fun beat. It was very off-tempo, very not what you would expect it to have. But then I really wanted parts where the beat just kind of switched up to that like standard 4/4. Like I felt like there was just maybe a couple of parts where you could just switch that beat into like get into the standard like 4/4 groove, And I thought it might just be a nice little bit of a change to the song. That would be very subtle at the end of the day. It wouldn't even take much to do it, Outside of that, I felt like the vocals, there was a little weirdness in the recording of them, and I'm not sure if that was like a choice or if maybe there was a proximity effect or what the case may be there. But there was parts where I just felt like the vocals sounded just a little phasey, and I don't know. It was a little odd. It would definitely take some more studying of like really listening to the track as like from a close perspective. But overall, I felt like I had a really good vibe, and I 100% agree with Alicia on the fact that I think you've got a really unique sound, and you definitely can be one of those people that say you don't sound like anyone else and own that shit with pride, Own
that shit. Natty, you have some thoughts?
I mean, I've actually listened to this song before. I mean, I listened to the whole album after the last feedback stream. I thought this was one of my favorite tracks in the release, mainly because the overall execution of the lyrics and the vibe and everything, it's really cohesive, but it also still evolves. I mean, the actual song does tell a story, and I really enjoy that. I mean, I don't really have any better feedback than what you guys have given to it as far as how you might improve this further. I mean, it's definitely one of those songs, I think, a few years down the line, it'd be worth revisiting with whatever experience you've gained since in that interim period to say, okay, I know this song was good, but now, now I've further developed my aesthetic, because it's clear you have an aesthetic. But with that evolution in mind, it might be really interesting to see where you would take it once you have that really nailed down.
Very, very interesting. I agree with that because, I'm actually in the middle right now. Finally, like today is the first day that I finally started to get back to work on this album, which before COVID, I was already hinting at people that I was going to like change my artist name and like have this new project. And then over the last few years, because of just working too much and everything, it's like working out, like it goes to the bottom of my list. And so, I mean, I just finally look back on it and now I'm like, I have to redo. It's been 3 years of these songs. And I'm like, I'm so much better than I was 3 years ago. So now I got to go back and redo like the drums on the first 2 tracks and this and that. And like, it's uneven because it's just taken so long. But I think, the positive thing is that you have a good idea and you can come back to it and you never know what you can do later on. So it might be fun to like remix yourself because you have so many weird like combinations and juxtapositions of genres in your stuff that like, maybe you do like a predictable remix, like a 4/4 remix, a dance floor remix. And that also just gets your release more mileage too. Like that's purely from a marketing perspective. That's just something you can do to extend the life of your release. Like, oh, like check out the new dance mix. And then you give it to like DJs, and then they play it and,
And then people check out the original and go, ooh, I can hear the differences and I can hear why. And I hear that it's still coherent regardless of which version they're listening to.
I can attest to that fact that Alicia's album is really good. I have had a sneak preview of said album, and I thought it was fucking awesome. I don't think that she needs to go in and change a whole bunch of shit, but she'll probably change a whole bunch of shit, and then I'll still tell her it's awesome, and then eventually she'll release the damn thing. But it's really good, just so you guys know. So you should definitely get that thing out to the crew. You really should. It's fucking great.
I finally, thanks to LBC, I just get to spend all my time either doing that or producing cool content for you. And just to shut that out for a second, if you tuned in halfway and you missed it, we've got so many cool things going on. We keep adding more programming. This Saturday, I'm doing another episode of Print My Live with a saxophone player, guitar player, songwriter guy who is going to put together a live performance for the first time. And then on Sunday, Jim is starting it's actually not a new show for him, but he's bringing it to us. We're really thankful, called Sampling Sundays, where he makes tracks out of farts. That's the TLDR. But the long version is anything you want with lots of interaction. So that's going to be great. So we only actually have a few more. It's a quiet night. I don't know if nobody's made any tracks this week, but I think maybe last week when we went for 4.5 hours, maybe we went through like everybody.
If we get to the point, I can always grab one of my old tracks and throw it in the mix, and you guys can roast me again. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, go for it. We only have like 4 more in the queue right now. So we're gonna go to Peter Lee again, who's been super awesome. We love having you, Peter. An untitled work in progress, just rendered, hot off the press.
Wow. All right, hot off the press. Let's do this.
All right, is it gonna play? Dropbox is being stubborn. I'm gonna just, you know what I'm gonna do? Why don't you talk a little bit about your sampling show some more? I'm just going to quickly download this because it's not playing from the browser.
Sampling Sundays. Okay, so the idea will be this Sunday, now that we have this really cool new Kia sound pack, we're going to run with that, because I just from Alicia playing with it on stream, I heard some of the sounds and I was already in my head like, ooh, I could use that like this. Ooh, I could do this with this. So that's what we're going to do this Sunday night. It's 7 p.m. Central, whatever that ends up being Eastern. 7 p.m. Pacific.
7 p.m. Pacific. I know time zones are so crazy. That's why I'm like trying to find a widget to look at everything. They're totally nuts.
So I'm in the technically the Midwest, so it's going to be 8 p.m. for me, but 7 p.m. Pacific. And we're just going to play. We're going to take that. We're going to do a 2 to possibly 3 hour stream, depending on how well it goes. And we're going to take that Kia thing, and we're just going to see what we can come up with. There's no genre restrictions. There's no nothing. We just go with the moment and see what happens. Eventually, I would love to get to the point where we get people to start sending me samples live on the fly, and I'll see if I can't just work them into the song, and we'll make it a little more interactive. So things to look forward to in the future.
Amazing. All right. No worries, Peter. I got your track. We're going to play. This is just called 3-4 right now, so we'll see. Okay, I think this is a whip, and so I think, obviously you're going to go a little bit further with it, but I think we can sort of start commenting on it now. I really, really liked the intro a lot, and then I was like, it kind of really caught me off guard when this drops in. It doesn't seem very connected, and the same with these chords that are happening right now. They seem a little bit random, so I think the body, and again, this is not my expert genre, but I think the body of your track seems a little thin and sort of like mid-range. Like it's kind of missing like both the low end warmth, and then the high end you've got that sparkly arps, but you've got the same problem as one of the other artists who was here with the arps. They're a little bit piercing. So I would say just if focus on taming those arps. Again, like dynamic EQ is really good for this, and then maybe just like creating a little bit more space and a little bit more depth, because it really felt like it was just sort of in one small place. Like it needs to be expanded, and that's definitely something that you do through mixing. So I don't know if anyone, either of you are more into this scene than me and have some nuances, but Jim?
I had actually all the same notes. I felt like it was a good start to something. I definitely feel like you've got a good direction going. And most of what I could hear outside of that was just mixed stuff. But again, like we're dealing with the fact that need to kind of dive into the track a little bit more, get some changes going, add some stuff to hold our attention and whatnot, and then worry about the mixed stuff later on, Holding people's attention when listening to music is honestly one of the biggest challenges you will ever face. Like that's what makes songs good or not good, and to the average person. Let me specify that, to the average person. We are all artists. We can do whatever we want with our palette of paint. It does not matter. It is your art. That's all that truly matters at the end of the day. But if you are trying to write music for the masses, then there's some guidelines, let's call them, you want to follow, So keeping people's attention is a really, really big part of that. So that's something to kind of step forward. But I do think you've got a good direction. Like I said, I think you've got a good foundation going here. So just keep building on it.
Yeah, Natty.
So I've actually got a few suggestions here that sort of preserve the intention but allow you to progress it a bit further. So obviously with this, again, it's all about the sort of gradual journey. So I mean, with the chords, so it's the pads. Like really, they're fine as a sound themselves, but I think you have to pay very close attention to just basic chord theory. So you can either just keep building the tension, stay away from home as far as possible, but that means you still have to sort of gradually leave your root chord out into the overworld and exploring your chord patterns and stacking your different variations. Or then you occasionally come back home where it resolves itself. One thing you could do in combination with messing about with that sort of thing, I mean, if you have to, look up a circle of fifths. That usually is the easiest guide to sort of see, okay, what chords fit within the journey. So you don't have to know it or remember it. You can look at it and try it.
One of the funnest things about the circle of fifths, I just want to touch on that. If you literally look at the circle of fifths and you take one chord, let's just say the outer wheel, that's all your majors. If you literally just take one chord and go to the right and just go that chord into whatever the next one says, to whatever the next one says, to whatever the next one says, it will sound awesome. I promise you.
Keep it really simple.
Yeah. And that's an old method. It's called the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Like when you overthink things, people get lost. When you do, that's why pop music is so popular, because it's the most basic versions of like complicated as music can get. It's so basic,
Oh, it's so true. Like the more experience that people get, I find that the more they simplify things. Like you focus on having just like a few good sounds going on at one time, and you can have a million sounds, but you have to be very artful with how you arrange them, and you have to balance it so that the listener only perceives a couple of things. And we got Jeffrey in the chat, big shouts out saying less is more, and it's true. I mean,
less is more.
Yeah, even in my own, like I'm still this piano player, and I will still just doodle all over the place, but I'm just learning because I'm too compulsive and I will make too many parts. I just already know that for me the second step is deleting. So the first step is do whatever you want, don't worry about it, don't overthink it, just go. And then the second step is delete, like, or just
build it up, strip it back.
Yeah, and for people who are afraid of commitment in Ableton, you just hit like the 0 key. You don't have to delete. You can just mute it and just be like, oh, does that need to be there? Do I miss it? No, well, it didn't need to be there. So
Right.
definitely.
This is a great example, even though this might be backwards. I'm wearing a 9 Inch Nails shirt, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to hear one of the kings of writing one chord progression through an entire song, he will never change the chord progression through an entire song. And yet, while you're listening, you will think the song is changing time and time and time and time again, because he's just really creative in how Trent and Atticus write. It's absolutely brilliant. So some people that you can listen to in that vein of like, I only have one chord and I don't know how to do this anymore. It's like there's a lot of really famous, popular, very well-known music that was one set of chords and never changed. So
the other thing I can suggest here is call and response. You've got that. It's like a robot ARP where it's like bleep blop bleep 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 bleep. So what you do
the
is
beatboxing today is great. I love it. I absolutely love it.
so what you
It's
do
so
is you
great.
get the blah, and then you respond with the bleep blop bleep 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 bleep. Rather than having it go constantly throughout the whole track, you could still maintain that techno rhythm through how you segment the call and response.
Dude. Okay, so at some point in time, you're just gonna have to like put together a clip of all the little like beatbox parts. What you can see on LBC, and it'll be all those little beatbox parts from today.
I'm pretty sure 80% of them are me as well.
Oh, don't worry. No, I do that all the time. So don't worry. This is why they love us though, because they just want to hear us beatbox their tracks. That's totally what it is.
It's awesome. I love it.
All right, so we got no fake, all caps. Okay, we get it. You're real. I believe you. A track called Enslaved. Are you okay? Do we need to send help? Is this a message? All right.
Right.
Well, go see if Google Drive decides to work. This is always, I think that Audius links are the best. SoundCloud links are the second best. And then Google Drive. Okay, here we go. So
YouTube works.
there we go. This was working now. I just have to download them. Google's not previewing. Oh, that was a really nice surprise. Like, because the beginning did not give you a clue what to expect. But when it dropped in, I really, really like that kind of first the way that it drops in. It kind of gives you like that feeling when you're on like an amusement park ride that's scary and like the bottom drops out from under you. And I love that feeling when I'm listening to like deep drum step. But yeah, I agree with the chat. Like the mix is missing some clarity and definitely like could use some top end. And you have a really, really nice deep round sub, like good. And as far as like things I've listened to tonight, it's definitely one of the more like warm, deep ones. So I think, and I do this too sometimes, you might have to dial some of the, like maybe the sub is sort of overtaking the treble, because sometimes when you put a limiter on that, and if your sub is really high, it just kind of takes over and you don't really hear, like the high end starts to go away. So I think that, that, and my biggest little critique of this though is the vocal timing. The timing of the vocals. You have to realize, like sometimes when people get acapellas and they put them in, they don't warp them properly, or they put them a little bit too ahead or behind. And definitely I would suggest like really listening to like the pocket of it, because it's just that like they just seem a little bit off, and they really like with the really good groove that you have, I want to hear them like dead on. And not only dead on, but sometimes when I have vocals in a really punchy track like this, I'll like compress them deliberately so that they're sort of pushing in and out to like add to that punchy out feeling, so that they're not just like soft and floating and in this case a little bit out of time, because that intro really like distracted me with that. I was like, okay, like why is it like it doesn't feel like it's right in there? And then when it dropped, it was awesome. So I mean, I like that vibe a lot. Jim.
Yeah, I actually agree with that 100%. I felt like the vocals are just a touch off. They just felt a little lazy. But this is definitely one of those songs where if you're going to utilize that for like a pre-drop type situation, like you want them to be super on point. Like the drums and everything in the drop coming in afterwards will bring that groove back, but you can lock those sections in beforehand and just have them dead on, and it'll really, really come through clearly. I totally agree on the top end, a little more clarity in the mix overall, but the thing for me was there was like and I've got a beatbox, I'm sorry, but
yes,
there was that like wah, 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 that sound that was happening. This is great. But that sound that was happening there, like it was a little just too upfront for me. It was kind of pulling me away from everything because it was just a little harsh. Not that it was a bad sound, but I think it could be in the mix a little bit more. And then the other little things for variety in the track, you definitely have some really fun parts where things would drop out and it would just be like a single sound. But you got to make sure that when you do that any reverb or anything else that you have as sends or whatever also get out of those sections, because that's what makes that little drop out. And then like where the snare happens all of a sudden right after it dead by itself, it makes those way more impactful if there's literally nothing there. It's almost like the entire track just gets muted. There's one sound and then like the snare comes in. It just sounds so cool when stuff like that happens. But overall, I felt like the low end was really great, nice and round, like really had a full sound to it. And I mean, I just thought it was a fun track altogether. Definitely had some griminess. Got a couple of stink faces out of me on that one.
Good. Two things stink faces up. Nathaniel.
Yep.
Nathaniel's cracking up. He's like listening.
I give that one 5 stink faces. 5 stink faces.
And I also can't think of anything better than what you guys have said at this point. I mean, obviously, Jim is our resident D&B expert, I'd say, in this case.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert, not by any means.
I was a drum and bass DJ for 12 years, so I think
I was going to say, I think she probably actually has more experience as like a drum and bass DJ than I do. It's just my favorite genre out of all the like EDM genres,
He's more loyal. Let's just say that. I defected from the army like quite a long time ago. I split. I deviated from the herd. I wrote my own Bible. Anyways, there's a certain point where I'm like, just words. They're coming out of your mouth. Just stop. Next up, I'm really excited. We've got Jeffrey MMVIII, and Those of you, if you've been in our Discord, you may remember Jeffrey won the Crypto Waves Audius Remix contest.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, Jeffrey is really amazing. He's super young. He's one of those really irritating people that can make a track in like an hour that sounds better than what you made in a week. So I have no doubt that he said it's not very simple, because we were talking about tracks being simple, but I'm sure it's probably clean. So
Not everything has to be simple.
nope, not everything has to be simple indeed. So, all right. Jeffrey, if you start selling stocks of yourself, I will buy some, because
Yeah.
I truly think you're just a legend that is about to happen. I'm just in love with the way that you really manipulate like reverb, little sounds, the way it fits together, the way it sits in my headphones. Like, it's just wild. I got the glasses on. What can I say?
What do you think, Nathaniel?
I mean, when we were told that it wasn't going to be simple, I was expecting something to be sort of more unpredictable in that sense. I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I think your use of motif is actually really well done. It lends a consistency to the track that sort of makes it comprehensible. So you can do all these cool little changes ups, and in that respect, the fact that it's really well produced is complicated. It's hard to pull off. But the track itself is still there's sort of a very poppy aspect to it, because it constantly repeats these little riffs and hooks. So I mean, I think in that regard, you're still playing by the whole keep it simple, stupid rule book. It's just disguised a little bit, I guess. in the dynamics of all the elements playing off each other. So I think it's really, really well done. There was nothing out of place that I could tell distinctly, although my listening environment isn't perfect, and I'd probably have to listen again in that regard. But I mean, it's one of those songs that takes you on a journey, and I think does reward repeat listening.
Definitely.
So good job.
Yeah. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything that Nathaniel said. I was expecting something to be like kind of all over the place and feel like I gotta like really like listen and try to like get into the mindset of this person, because we're not expecting a simple song. But then like it just kind of locked in, and every part that I was expecting to happen happened for me, and it made me very happy. I like simple things, so what can I say? The use of the reverbs, and this was pointed out in chat, the uses of reverbs and delays and things like that was very creative. And I think that is, to me, the aspect of where you were talking about it's not very simple, but you didn't make the song complicated. You used creative parts underneath in layers in complicated ways, which was really fun. You know, I had a couple of small notes on the second drop, that it was actually toward the last one, where everything kind of drops out. Get rid of everything. Like, don't even put that little kick hit there. Just let it go empty and put that tiny little, what are we going to call it? Lead? Are we going to beatbox again? Where it was like,
yes.
blink, 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 blink. just that part. Like that would have just been one of those like, oh shit. Like, yeah, he went there, you know, like, oh yeah, it would have been really, really great. It was great the way it was. I'm just saying that would have kind of taken it to another level. I personally would have loved to hear some hip hop vocals on this. I felt like it had a really rad, like kind of boom bappy type hip hop feel to it. So I would have loved to have heard some hip hop vocals on this. Something you could think about, maybe find somebody to do another remix of this track, maybe. But outside of that, the vocals were just a touch low. The vocals that you had in there, you could bring them up a little bit more, and everything else I thought was fantastic. So well done.
Yeah. Very, very fantastic. So much good. I mean, as Shwilly is saying, I can't stop smiling, but it's really nice. It's like my ears, and I'm wearing the sub pack too. So every time I hear a track with good bass, feels really
You
good.
and your sub pack.
Yes, massage. And Shwilly shouts out back in the chat. Shwilly's got something for us this week. It's a collab with Tree Goud, okay, called Way Too Spicy. gosh, yeah. At fat indeed, Zavi. I really, Shwili, I love it when you come in here because it's like you bring me back home. I feel like I'm in Denver at the Black Box right now. Yeah. Or like raging at Sonic Bloom or something. You got like, it's funny, like there's this particular brand, and I would really like to give shouts out to Nicole from Submission, who I think is pretty much responsible for this entire like deep dubstep scene in Denver. She owns the Black Box. She's the rave mom. I'm the rave mom of Discord. She's the rave mom of like the dubstep scene, and not even just in Denver. She's done so many awesome things, and I love her so much. And yeah, it just brought me back to like Party Zone. The second big bass drop, like I wanted that bass. I love the way it sounds when it glides. It was such a tease because I just wanted it to do it more, because there were points where it just had solid notes like na na na. I can't stop today. There were points where it just had those notes, and it would have been nice if just like occasionally it did like a little like like one little like slide, because it's just so juicy. It's such a warm sound. Like those kinds of sounds really are gratifying when they kind of like sweep through, and like portamento is one way of kind of getting that sweepy frequency effect. I mean, you can also do all kinds of other sound design things, but I liked already what yours was doing in the portamento, so I would have just like done it a couple bit times more. Jim's in Denver too. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but there is this like very distinct, the Denver scene.
It's just a bass scene here. I feel like, at least as far as I know, I feel like that scene just kind of like spawned from here and branched out. Like all the dubstep kids kind of got sick of hearing fucking robots fighting all night long and decided to just get like super high and like how deep and how subby and how just like lost can we get in this, and it created this, it spawned this whole sound that I think is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I get the stink face when I listen to that type of stuff for sure.
Yeah. Sure.
Overall, like so I felt like a couple small things. I felt like the spicy sample repetitive towards the end. I understand the movement and like putting it in and pulling it out, but I felt like it was just becoming a little bit too much as we were getting to the end of it. I felt like we could have gotten a little more experimental with the music instead of just trying to use that sound to try to switch things up. I felt like the low end could have been a little bit more, not necessarily the grime of the sub, but the actual sub. It just felt like it wasn't quite like really making me vibe. Now, I'm not wearing a sub pack like, our queen here is wearing. But I'm just saying in my ears, like what I heard bass was good, but I felt like it could have actually gotten a little more. You've got the kick sitting in a really good like chest punchy spot. So you could get away with using all the friggin' low end of this track just for sub, which is so brilliant. That is such a great mix choice there, outside of that, no, that was it. That was all the notes I had. Yeah, loved the kick. A little more sub. Vocals got a little too repetitive. Other than that, I thought it was freaking awesome.
Nice. Nathaniel.
So this is actually an area where I struggle a lot with the sort of deep dub sound. It's not something I have a huge amount of experience in. But I mean, I could tell, so if you listen carefully, it's clear this is a collab. There's a lot of sort of a merging of two very different styles going on with the choice of percussion, but I think it really works. Like, it's a cohesive track. But, so it's a good thing, I think. It's sort of the two components of whatever you've been adding has, it does add up to a whole. So that's kind of neat. I think that the song might actually be a little bit too drawn out. Which is probably part of the problem tied into the spicy sample getting too spicy, as someone made me laugh in the Twitch chat. So, it might just be a case of just, rather than thinking of how many extra changes can I add in to justify the length, just sort of cutting it back a little bit more, just sort of getting to that second drop a little bit faster, and then easing out and letting the track go on its way. I mean, I don't know, is that fair?
No, I think all of the feedback is valuable because we do have like different backgrounds and perspectives, and people hear different things, and of course it's all kind of subjective. Like there's some mixed
Yeah.
things I think are more objective, but still, I mean, sometimes people make a choice, like say in trap music, to have a super loud kick drum, and that's part of the style, but it doesn't work in other styles. So there's so many like variables. I think that's just it's just cool to always hear what people who like different styles think when they hear your music, especially people that are not in your scene, because honestly, like this is the biggest all my best producer friends that I've gotten mentored, and like this is a secret I don't think I've ever dropped, but a lot of my closest friends, the people who mentored me since I was very, very young, are house producers. Not drum and bass producers, not dubstep producers. And it's just like I made the friends I made, and I really started like to value the input they gave me because it wasn't just like an echo chamber. You know, sometimes you can just be like sitting around the table with all your bros and you're like, oh yeah, that tune's so good, that one's so dope. And you're all kind of doing the same thing. And there's definitely, I've seen some like DJ crews and producer crews really stagnate because they just stay in the same little circle. So I just think like this is kind of why I had this idea to do a show like this, because I thought, you know, I see shows with one person giving feedback, but I think that's not as helpful as like two or three people who have different backgrounds and like what they agree on and what they disagree on. And, you know, it's very,
Right.
it's really cool. So yeah, I mean, I don't think, Nathaniel, the fact that you have less experience with the genre makes it really valuable because it's just like you're not listening and expecting anything in particular or having a cliche in your head. You're just listening as a listener. So
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that Nathaniel's input on that track is actually the most important input because you're trying to impress and get somebody to be interested in something that they're not typically interested in. So if you can get legit feedback from that person, that's the most valuable feedback at the end of the day.
totally. So yeah, Natty, we love you. We love your outfit as well. And
Yes.
yeah, we usually have the videos of the day. They usually stay up for a little while. So just you know, I would clip it if I were you, and then I think it stays up like forever. I think the clips always stay up. So that's what people have been doing is clipping them, which is really nice. We love that. We appreciate it. We're just trying to build our community. We're trying to get enough people hyped so that when we drop this competition, people will watch it, be inspired by it, and win lots of prizes, and everybody has fun. So this is why we do it. We do it for you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. We loved having you. Please come back and send us tracks. We really love listening to
Yes.
them. We got a couple more left, and then that's it. One of them is Jim that we're gonna roast. So he'll be in the middle. Right now we got one more from Green Hollow called Blue Star. Really, really nice. Liquid vibes again from Green Hollow. Shouts out. Liking your music. Thanks for blessing us with some good liquid tonight. Jim, go for it.
I mean, for real, like, can we just turn this into a drum and bass stream? Because I'd just be the happiest guy ever. Like,
you would.
I mean, not really, but it's just great. It's great to know that, like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that are constantly like, why do you produce drum and bass? Like, no one likes that crap anymore. And then I do this show with you guys, and like everything we're hearing, well, a lot of what we're hearing is drum and bass, and it just gives me so much more faith in the genre. Like, there's still some love out there, you know.
I mean, come to Europe. It's still like one of the biggest genres here. You know, it's
The
just
UK
it's just
loves
really,
it.
I mean,
it's just North
you're
America.
stuck with me if that happens. Sorry. You're gonna have to move a spot on the couch for my ass, because don't tempt me. I will.
Jay Wellington is saying that they're from North Carolina, and funny trivia, the very first gig that I ever got flown out to do was a drum and bass gig in North Carolina.
In North Carolina.
Yes,
Oh, that's awesome.
I did one show in Raleigh and one show in Chapel Hill. It was like a little tour, and I think the first time I was like 17 years old, and at the time I was, by the way, I started out as an MC. That was the first thing I ever did, and I was one of only like 2 female drum and bass MCs in North America. So always that's sort of been my technique, is like, I'm not good at marketing, but I'm good at doing stuff that no one else is doing, and that's just sort of how I've continued on my trajectory. And so I mean, I definitely love hearing all this stuff too, and I saw it kind of die out here or in Canada and the US. I'm not there actually, but in Europe, coming back to Europe now, I'm just still seeing these massive lineups, and
Right.
it's still a thing. So
feedback for me on the track overall, I thought the track was really great. I thought it had a really great vibe to it, a lot of fun sounds. So it's definitely, again, some top end stuff that was a little shrilly in there for me. Just listen to, like, there, in a mixed world, you have to make choices, and a lot of times when you get those synths and stuff like that, you don't really need to let them sit above 8 to 10K. Like, they're going to start to get really harsh, and they're going to start really competing with your hi-hats and other things up there in the top end. So it's something that you really should definitely take a look at with certain of synth sounds or sample sounds they're using that are more top end. Outside of that, I felt like there was a little too much low mid buildup in the mix overall. That could be drums, that could be not basically high passing certain synthesizer sounds, whatever. But just watching that like 300 to 500 realm build up in the low mids starts to make things sound a little bit muddy. And then outside of that, this is just all mixed stuff, because I really felt like the song was great overall. So outside of that, you could get away with a little more sub. Just saying, you could put a bit more bass in there, and it would be totally okay. So, but great job overall. I really personally like the track. If I was playing a liquid track, I would have definitely played that track.
nice. That is the highest compliment. Yeah, I definitely, I not too much feedback aside from what he said, and I could really feel like the low end in the sub pack too. So I think that balancing that out.
I see how it is.
Yeah. Stealing your feedback. I think that balancing the sub will clear up a lot of other stuff in the mix, but it definitely is giving me that like nostalgic but modern feeling, which is sort of my favorite flavor of drum and bass. I like when it kind of has a classic vibe to it, but obviously with a modern production. And I think that you are hitting that really, really well. And I'm just remembering one more thing about my first ever fly out gig. I was emceeing for The Usual Suspects from Renegade Hardware. I was so like nervous, and then Bailey from Metalheads was the other headliner, and he didn't make it through customs. So the promoter just said, well, I have this hotel room, this fancy one. Do you want to just take this one? And I was like, yes. So it was my first gig ever, and I got to stay in like the nicest hotel room. That kind of spoiled me, because after that it was a very sharp contrast. You know, after that it was many like sleeping on floors and artist relations
Hostel
trailers
lifestyle.
and getting to festivals
Yeah.
without a tent. So don't worry, that was only my first false
You
out
know,
of town gig.
The very first time I ever DJ'd, so I mean, nobody really here knows my background, but I played in a punk band, and we were from Phoenix, Arizona, and we were actually one of the biggest bands to come out of that town. And so we used to play festivals for 15 to 20,000 people all the time, big radio festivals and shit. So I just did this festival the weekend before that, and one of my best friends in the whole world who taught me how to DJ, classic turntablist type style, He was with me, and it was 18,000 people at this festival, and I played drums. It was no big deal. It was just another day in the life, whatever. The following weekend, I went to DJ with him at a club. There's no one in the club. The bartender, the door guy. Literally, that's it. I went to put a needle down on the record, and my hands were going like this the whole time. And I just love that. I love the fact that, like, when it's your first gig, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, you're just like, so just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it could be in, Bumville, North Carolina. It doesn't matter. Like, it's just, you're always nervous, and it's friggin' awesome. I just think it's so great.
Nice. Nathaniel, you got anything to add?
No, I think you guys covered it. It was a solid vibe, and I appreciate that.
Definitely. Speaking of solid vibes, we're going to roast Jim next.
Oh, good God.
Is this another?
This
Last
is
time
an
we
old
loved the track
track.
too. Is it?
This is a very old track. So this is I got hired to do a catalog of music for TV and film, and I used Ableton's Push because it was brand new at the time for me, and I wrote 30 songs in 30 days. No joke. I sat there, and then I picked out about 8 of those songs that I really, really love, and I used those songs to put out a record. It's under my legal name, like my real name, which is James Wilcox,
You
but
just
this is a
doxed
song
yourself.
off that album.
Oh,
Yep, there
send
you go.
pizza to his house. All right.
Send pizza to my house.
All
Please
right.
send me pizza. I can eat a pizza all day.
What's the story for this artwork? Is this like how your brain was after writing 30 tracks in 30 days?
Yes. That's why the album is called A Wave of Reality, because I was brain fried when I got done with that. Like, big time brain fried.
I've
when I
actually
got done
listened
with
to this
that.
album.
So
All right. Well, let's check it out.
it's super fun.
right. That was our very own.
It's funny.
Yes.
I haven't
go
heard
ahead.
that in forever.
Really? Oh, it was a lot of fun. I thought, wow, Xavi saying one of my favorite of the night. High praise. He is very picky about music.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That's so generous. Thank you so much.
I like the vocal a lot. I like the kind of like gives me like I didn't expect it to be as like chill and grooving at the same time as it was. Like at first it dropped and I was like, oh, it's gonna be like harder, and then the vocals came in and I was like, this is smooth. So super really beautiful and catchy. The only thing I wanted was where the bass just always goes up, like da 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 da. I kind of sometimes wanted it to go like an octave down again, like da da, or like even just for the sound to slightly change. So as I've said before, like sometimes just having like 3 copies of the same thing and then tweaking each one a tiny bit and then substituting them out is like a sneaky, like it sounds like it's the exact same sound, but then there's just little bits where, like I'll do this all the time. I'm actually in the middle of doing it with one song where I'll just like print one copy and then do another effect on it, print another one, and then just in Ableton, I get really lazy. I don't want to chop things. So I make this little Hocket machine, which is something that Mr. Bill showed me once, where you basically just like put everything in a group and then you do this little trick with the Ableton compressors, and you can basically assign a macro to just like flip back and forth. So all 3 are constantly playing, but you're just like kind of soloing one at a time and using a macro knob to do it. So something like that is just like the lazy way of making it sound like you spend hours cutting together like similar but different Hocketed lines. But that's the only thing. Like I really love the melody and the whole body of it. And Dan Mack is saying, love those glass bottle like sound effects and the highs. Yeah, I really like the high end
Yeah,
too.
thank you. Thank you.
Natty.
I mean, well, I've actually listened to this entire album because I mean, a long time ago, I don't, was it last year or the year before? I don't know. I don't remember how long we've actually been talking to each other, but I was actually linked all his solo work, so I've actually listened to everything there, and I think it really, for pushing this one further, would have been really just a case of just extra little minor additional sound changes. I mean, I think that snare is ever so slightly flabby, but I mean that doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem with the whole track. There are moments where it could just be the thing that's sort of really driving it, but you could just sort of dynamically change your EQ ever so slightly as it progresses to give everything else a little bit more breathing space. But I mean, obviously if I save this to my library, I must like it very much.
It's fun for even me to listen to this, because from a mix perspective, I listened to this, and this is, I want to say 2008, 2010-ish. And I want to say, like, even in the last 10 years, like, my mixes have changed so much. So even just listening to it from my own perspective is like, wow, like, I would have actually cut a little bit of this out, and I should have cut a little of that out. Like, I would have been roasting myself, all day long. But it's fun. I love listening to that record because of where that record came from and how it came about, and how I show people, like, you can write an entire record on a single instrument. You can pull up something like Push and just go for it. You don't need anything else, like you can use one thing and kind of just make entire songs out of it if you understand how to be creative with it,
That's definitely, you hinted at maybe doing that on a future show. I'm sure that would be like so interesting to watch. So definitely love to see you do that sometime. Sweet. We got 3 more left. And the first one is another member of our Discord, Alfie. Big shouts out to Alfie. And it's called Gotta Think About It, in brackets, loud, in all caps. All right. I really like those chords, Alfie. They definitely like, it's the kind of chord progression that just makes you feel good, like happy, like everything is going to be okay. I feel very calmed by this. Two things for me that I would really love to hear. One of them is like a solo kind of lead element, because you have some great start with the chords, but they remain the same and they don't really change timbrely. So I think that, you know, you need to do a couple of things. Like one would be like evolve them a little bit through like slow filtering or just little change ups, or maybe giving the track a break for a bit longer. And then the other is to have that little lead element that plays off it. So like kind of like a so I don't know, something like that. It's just in the air tonight. I love it. Vocals are coming, so that makes sense totally. Like I could see having vocals on it, but even with vocals on it, still like changing up a bit about it. Like as Barrett says in the chat, it feels very loop based. I love the drum fills. He mentioned that. I think the toms, those little fills, are really great. Like it's very authentic sounding. It sounds almost like a real kit. But my other thing is that it sounds like the whole track has reverb like on the master. Like the whole thing is just a little bit far away, and it's almost like I'm listening to this really good French house track, but like next door. Which is like when you're working in post, and I used to work in post, when you want to do the effect of like the movie scene is like somebody has music coming through the wall. That's how you do it. You put like a high cut on it and you put a bunch of reverb on it. So yes, it is supposed to sound like it's in a club. I get it. You can do that, but the problem is like you can't totally do that. There has to be something that grounds you in central. Like you can have that effect maybe on the tops, but not like on the low end. Like maybe keeping the low end cleaner and bigger and drier would let you get away with that. I mean, what do you think about that, Jim? Like I know it's a creative choice, but I think that you need to.
I agree. I think a track like this, especially if you're going for French house, like that is something that people want to play in clubs. Like that is definitely, let's just go there. That's not drum and bass. You know what I mean? Like that is something that people are going to be like, dude, we love listening to French house all night long. So if you want the track to sound like in a club, write it and then listen to it in the club. You know, if you give it to somebody already sounding like it's in a club, then that sound, that overall in the club type sound, is going to get so emphasized when it's actually played in a club that it's going to make the track sound worse. You know, so you gotta think about that type of stuff ahead of time. My overall critique for this song, though, I felt like you needed a little more length. Of course, that's definitely a thing. But overall, I felt like the vibe was really great. Like I really just had a good feeling. Like had a nice groove. Everything felt really, really good. My only like minor critique would be, give me some more low end. Like you had the kick in a good spot. The kick wasn't too subby, which is great because at the same time, that gives you a lot of room down at the bottom to like bring up that bass and get away with it, you know? So something to think about. You could definitely get some more low end in there.
Yeah, and I mean, Alfie's saying like there's a context of the whole project, and I get it. And so maybe like what you can do is, you know, have an album version and then like a single version, because I think that if it needs the context of the whole album to make sense, it's going to be hard as a single, right? I'm not saying you have to think of it as a single, but just I really like it. I think it is like a dancey, really cool track. So it would be nice to have a version that I could play, like, or DJs, you know, that are playing house could play, because otherwise, like, right. And I think just like the low, you can give that illusion. I still think that you can give that illusion by having it on the top end and not so much on the bottom. That's just my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. Yep. Nathaniel, you always look so serious. What are you thinking?
I know. I in my head, I'm always going, man, if somebody can get Nathaniel to like start bobbing his head, like you're winning huge points in this crew. Like,
and the problem is, I'm sitting on my bed, so every time I move, the whole bed bounces.
Can you give us some Foley sound effects of that?
I mean, so I've actually heard an earlier version of this one because everyone sends me their webs. But so I was actually waiting for the vocal to come in to see if an improved version of the last vocal take had actually been added or not. And then whenever it didn't come, I was like, okay, it's just not a vocal song anymore. So I mean, I'm actually looking forward to hearing that in completion. Because, I mean, I agree that it does need the hook. And if it's going to be a vocal thing over a synth thing, that's cool. That works totally fine. I mean, I know the whole goal of the project is that it's like you're performing it in a venue, so it's meant to be as close to sort of real as you can get with a virtual setup, and that's neat. But I mean, I've now had enough experience with trying to replicate that effect. I mean, for me, there's not a lot of perspective because I don't go to gigs. It's not really something I've ever had time for while I was studying, and obviously with COVID and everything, that's kind of restricted that's happening. So I mean, I don't have the perspective to say, oh, you should do, if you do it this way, it'll sound like this sort of space, because I just don't have that association. So I mean, as far as achieving your goal, I mean, it would be probably worth looking into what Isha and Jim suggested, because they know better than I do at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I totally get what you're doing. I don't want to hijack your creative choice. I just think that you have to be like, it really depends if you just want to play it for yourself, or like you have, you're just selling it on Bandcamp only as an album, because that is something you can do. Like you can control the listener by just saying, okay, this just comes as a pack and this is that. But if you try to put it out as a single, I think it might confuse some people in a way that you might not want, if you care about that sort of thing, but only if you do, because, Jim said it really well earlier, like it matters what you think, and only if you decide that you care about what other people think does it then matter what they think. So
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump. We got Frost in the house. Really excited. We have not had Frost around. Frost is an OG Discorder, really, really killer producer. And I'm not shy to say on stream that I've learned so much from working with him. Great engineer. I think in Denver at the moment as well. We got the Denver representing. Oh. Yeah. And this is probably going to be rather loud, knowing Frost. He definitely, we've spent many nights arguing about mixing into a limiter or not mixing into a limiter. But for somebody who mixes into a limiter, he knows exactly what he's doing. And it's to the point when we would make tracks together and they would say, okay, we want to get it mastered because it's a compilation. Can you please take your limiter off? And they would, he'd go, okay, fine, you can try. And then his master would be better, So I think the lesson I've learned from him is just that, like, there are old rules and there are sort of new rule breaking in the era of digital audio. Like when I went to school, you could not clip, right? You clip the board, you destroy the equipment. But now it doesn't really matter per se if you actually know how to use that for your own gain. See what I did there?
Shit, you should.
That's my dad joke.
You would cringe if you watch me mix analog drums with like the new SSL EV2 that Waves put out. Like I'm literally in there going minus 20 dB, and then the mic gain, I'm just like cranking the shit out of it just to get like nasty fucking sorry about my language, but to just get like nasty saturation on all the drums. Like people are always like, what are you doing? Sometimes. And then when they hear the drums together, they're like, oh my God, they sound so like huge. And I'm like, it's because we can break all the rules that we were taught not to break back in the day. We can do that now. Like there's nothing's going to break if I turn all this crap up in this plugin. It's not going to matter. you know?
Totally. All right. So this is called Black Hole. All right. Let me just open it in. I realized that I have to open it in my Safari because I have 20,000 browsers. So let me just do that real quick. Here we go.
Correct you for the one last time. So you wanna fall you for the one last night. Hit me with the breeze to give us one more time. And I would fight for it like. Said I didn't wanna see you, but it's not the truth. Said I didn't really need you, but I lied to you. Said I want to be free, so I'm feeling lost with you. Every time I leave, people sometimes lose. Said you didn't wanna need me, but it's not your fault. Said you wish it could be easy, but you got withdrawal. Stuck inside your penitentiary with the massive wild. And I keep on trying to climb out, but I always
Oh my God. I've been
Very
getting
sudden, eh?
I've been getting bass massages from the sub pack, but this one, like, I'm going to be more delicate than I was originally going to be with my comment about where I was feeling it. Let's just say in my like lower back digestive kind of area. I'm like feeling it like ripping through me. It's like, am I feeling okay? In a really good way. Yeah.
Are you trying to say he put the brown note in there? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah, no, I mean, that was the perfect gnar as always. I don't know, those golden German ears that Frost is the type of producer that I'll send him something and he'll be like, there's a problem. There's a resonance at 136 hertz. It's just like, so, I mean, that's
Sounds like Nathaniel.
It's in C minor, so it's pretty low sub. Yeah, that makes sense. That's that low thing. So yeah, I think I agree with what Barrett is saying in the chat. The vocals could come out a bit more, just a little bit more, because you have such a strong force with all your other elements. Like especially your build up drums are so like assaulting, and it's just hard to compete with that. So you could do that whole pop trick of like side chaining everything to the vocal just a little bit, just to give it a little bit room. I'm gonna let Jim jump in because I know he's produced like some top 40 and things like that, and I think it's hard sometimes to get that balance because in EDM the vocals are a little bit more buried, and in pop sometimes they're way too loud. But I feel like this is a good genre to go between that, you know?
Yeah. Frost, if you're in Colorado, then I'm sure you probably know Lodo's and Tavern and all. Well, none of those are those places anymore, but what they were pre-COVID. I was the music director for Lodo's for a long time and one of the head resident DJs there. And I would play this track at probably right around 1:30 just to, get people like just going bananas, but to kind of scare the crap out of them all at the same time. Like that drop was so filthy. Like I immediately just saw myself standing in that little corner at Lodo's on the freaking patio and just being like, super stink face, just like going nuts and being like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. I would look up and everyone's just standing there staring at me like, what the hell are you doing?
Yes.
But legit, like I thought this track was absolute fire. I agree from that perspective on the vocals could come up just a little bit more, but that is definitely more of a top 40 type perspective on it. This sounded like a remix. I don't know if it really was, but it sounded like it could have been a remix. And on that aspect, that's the one thing in those types of clubs that people are going to latch onto. And if you give them that, just that touch of that remix, whatever vocal that is, that they can be like, oh yeah, I know this song. And then you just drop the hammer on them. Oh my God. Like Lodo's would literally have been, oh great. So Lodo's would have just been like bouncing up and down. Like the floor would have been moving up and down, like legitimately. It would have been insane. So killer job. Great job. Just an awesome track.
Natty too. You did slightly bob.
I know.
He did. I did see his head moving there for a minute. I was like, oh shit, look at that. Yeah,
I know.
Matt.
I think obviously, I mean, it obviously isn't quite finished, but I mean, I would like, if you're going to keep it sort of this general 1.5 drops and we're done kind of thing, I think if you can just nail that outro, then it'll feel resolved, because as of right now it doesn't quite yet. Obviously it just stops, but I mean, I'm obviously it's a whip, so I mean, that's kind of just like a duh.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's really me being critical, saying more just I want to hear what that resolution is, you know?
Yeah, no, I think you could go a lot of places, and definitely like that drop is super powerful. So, you know, you could even get away with doing it again, but I know you won't. I know you'll like change it up and add a few little things.
Frost never stays with the same rules. It's always a completely different thing in this, second time round.
See, I love that as a top 40 DJ in those aspects. I loved it when producers got good at that, because then I could choose, depending on the night and the time that I was going to play their track, I would have cue points set up like, okay, like, where am I playing this track? Is it going to be that 1:45 a.m. type thing where I'm going to play it from the middle because the second drop of this is like far filthier than the first version? Or am I going to play it a little earlier where I can get away with them slightly, and not so much in this track, but a milder drop, you know what I mean? So I loved it when tracks Like when producers were good at that, like the first track is gnarly and you're just like, yeah, you think that one's gnarly, give it another 30 seconds and watch what happens, you know?
Yeah, I bet you in
I
the
think it's
second
awesome.
in the second drop it'll just go like even like whirr, and like to bottom out. Yes. I can't wait to make a sample pack out of tonight. It's going to be great. So today we got some classic EDM people in here, like from the Discord, from the OG. We got 17 Pigeons, who is one of, I think Nathaniel and 17 Pigeons are the only people who were on this Discord before I was.
Almost
Wow.
near enough, yeah.
Yeah, or like at least around the same time. Yeah, because I took over like about 5 years ago. Frost, I love his comments. I'm feeling like the second drop should be 800 BPM techno with everything high cut at 200 hertz.
Go for it.
Send it in.
If anyone's gonna pull it off, it'd be you.
Give us
Look,
the
bro,
update.
if you can make it sound good, make it sound good. Run with it. Who cares?
Amazing. We got 17 Pigeons, Storm Chasing, and then we're going to close out tonight with Schwilly and probably some more deep forest dubstep. I'm looking forward to that. But we got 17 Pigeons. I actually haven't heard what you've been up to in a long time, so I'm looking forward to this too, called Storm Chasing. Oh, it's like drum and bass night here. Jim is like, I don't know if it's just because you're here, but you are being absolutely catered to, my friend. That was 17 Pigeons. Yeah, I think you've got a really, really good low end and drums, like the kick and the snare, everything is like nice and powerful. But the high end, oh my gosh, please, that was actually, it was hard. I had to keep turning it down, and then it kept redlining even when it was below. So I think that if you fix the high end, you will get a more even sort of master, because the high end is like almost going, I don't know if like you're limiting and you're making sure that like true peak limiting is happening if you're doing the master, and obviously that was limited, it was nice and loud, but you sometimes if you don't do true peak limiting, it can go above zero. So I think you just really want to watch the EQ like across the whole thing. I would like, if I was mastering this, I would just like a linear phase EQ cut the whole high range. But because it's your track and it's your mix, I would just go in and really try and control. But that being said, it could just be an aggressive limiter. Sometimes an aggressive limiter will push the high end up super much. So, that's not a phrase, Leisha. But then, so I would check obviously first your mastering chain and like turn it off and then see if that high end is still that intense. And that's the main thing. Like everything else I think is sitting in a good place, but that was a little bit tough for me in my high end favoring headphones. What about you, Natty?
I mean, I think for me, especially once we sort of got about 8 to 16 bars into the drum and bassy section, it felt like your glittery ARP that goes bit. It was responding to a melody that didn't exist. Like I feel like you need another sort of either a sort of a vocal component or a lead synth or something where to justify the you've got the response, but we need the call in places to sort of fill out the space a little bit more. Because it's like it's so close to sort of having this really dynamic and energetic arrangement progress, but you sort of just settle into the groove and then never really leave it. When you've got a whole lot of room in your arrangement to access all these harmonies and counter melodies and all that kind of thing. So I mean, I think from an arrangement perspective, it start humming over the top of it. Work out what you can fill in places. Don't go overkill. There's such a thing as too many melodies, but just sort of play with it a little bit more, I'd say.
Yeah, Jim, we were going to say something about reference mixing.
Yeah, so I agree with Nathaniel, and I definitely agree with Alicia on the top end side of things. That was one of my notes that I had. Let's call it the creative side of things first. I really wanted the track to kind of kick in after that first sub drop. I felt like you could have changed that arrangement slightly to the point where you were like when that first one, boo, and you could have just like brought in kind of like a first drop, but it didn't have to be like super over the top. Like you could kind of bring in the track and really get it moving right there, and then let that go for a minute, and then kind of drop into the next section. That was just personal preference. Obviously, this is very subjective criticism there. I could have used a little more sub in the mix overall. And then overall, I just felt like the track was a little bit too separated. I think Nathaniel really nailed it when he was talking about the call and response. I also felt like just like a little more of that pad that was in there would have helped kind of glue some of those other sounds together because they just sounded like they were really far away from each other. And then overall, let's go into what you said on the Discord chat. I have the same problem. High end is a big issue when it comes to my mixes. So reference tracks, I cannot stress this enough. Pull out another drum and bass track that you really, really love and just A/B between your mix and that track. You will instantaneously hear if your track is really, really bright. It will stand out so quickly, and what happens is eventually when you start doing this often enough, you start to get tuned to when things are too bright. So reference tracks. There's plenty of plugins out there too that will give you the ability to reference stuff.
Yeah, I say this like a broken record, but adapter metric AB, it's normally really, really expensive, but it's sold on the whole like plugin alliance site. And like a couple times a year, they do this like any plugin for 20 or 30 or 50. And sometimes they exclude it, but at least a few times a year they include it. So I would kind of just like stay on their mailing list because it goes on sale for $30 or $50. And it's so invaluable because it eliminates that half second when you're like trying to switch between tracks. Because normally, you put a track in and then you're like solo or like you go to the source. With this, you just kind of hit the button and it just flawlessly goes back. And not just the track itself, but it has comparison like EQ and dynamics and phase and all kinds of things. So I think it is really valuable not just to have reference tracks, but yeah, if you can, to have a tool where it's very quick for you to do that. And it helps me. This is the only way I finish mixes because I have a nice studio in Denver with an ISO booth that I spent a lot of time treating, and then I moved to Spain and now I live in like this apartment with paper thin walls where the garbage trucks are basically my daily dubstep when they come by and rattle the windows.
Yeah.
So I've really had
garbage trucks womp.
Exactly. I really had to rely on reference tracks. That's my only saving grace, because I know that what I have here, like I do have really nice headphones, but you can't totally, 100%. Like you have to have something to compare to. So I think even really good producers, like every producer I know that is great at mixing still uses reference tracks, because you just need another perspective. Like books have editors, right? So you need that. So
another one I'd just like to point out, Mastering the Mix is a website, and they have a ton of really great plugins, but they have a reference plugin that's the one that I personally use. Is called Mix. Wait, hold on. Not Mix Room. I'm looking at the wrong one here. Mastering the Mix. I think it's just called Reference. Anyways, but Mastering the Mix is the website. They have one called Reference. Same idea. They put that thing on sale for $30 now and again, and you can literally load a track into it, and it will pull up your track as the master track, and you could just A/B between them. And it is absolutely, I mean, it's priceless to have stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, Nathaniel's yawning, so I think that's like our cuckoo clock for the bell for the last track. No, I mean you're a boss. Nathaniel and I did 4.5 hours the other week, but it was funny because Evelyn tapped out at one point and was like, "My ears are cotton." So the first reference plugin Nespin West is asking, it's Metric AB. I'll put it in the chat. And that's, Ozone, Neutron. There's a lot of comparison tools that are just really valuable. So pick your poison. Yep. There's a lot of them, but they all really, really help. So we'll close off with something that is probably likely to be more low end and less high end. We'll go back to Schwilly and give our bass a fresh rinse for the last track of the night. So shouts out to everybody who submitted their tracks. We love them. We're so inspired by your creativity. That's why we do this. This is another collab, and Schwilly said he's having a little trouble nailing the mix, so he really wanted some feedback, and we'd love to give it to you. So, all right, Breaking Boundaries. Thank you, Shwali. That was the perfect sort of come down for the evening, like really nice and deep. I definitely have a lot to say. I think I can answer a lot of your troubles mixing because I've been through a lot of these issues before. And so actually Frost, who we just had on, one of the things that he pointed out to me is like I'm a piano player. So when I put MIDI in, I play it by hand usually. And before I met him, I used to kind of just leave it. And what happened is sometimes the tails of my sounds would end up being too long because I didn't clean up the MIDI. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but my immediate thing when I started hearing the sounds, like the synths and all the things, was tails too long, reverbs too long, overlapping, causing mid-range resonance. And that's going to make it really, really hard for you to mix because that main bass sound you have is really like kind of almost like I get what you're going for. It's like deep and kind of muffled, but it's just very, it's in that really difficult sort of muddy and boxy kind of range. And so already that's going to be tough to mix. Like I would do some serious notching in that, but also when you're playing notes with the other watery synths, sometimes I hear them overlapping. And so I think that you have to find a way to clean them up even within the reverb. So there's a couple things you can do. I mean, an easy thing is to make sure the synth you're using is just set to monophonic so that the next note will cut the other one off instead of playing, the end of overlapping the end. And then the other thing with, I don't know if you've ever tried gating your reverb or side chaining just your reverb, but that's a really awesome thing that you can do where you can send it to a reverb and then put a side chain on the reverb that is side chaining to, not necessarily the kick drum, because a lot of people get stuck. They hear side chaining, they just think kick drum and sub, but side chaining to another element so that they have the illusion of being at the same time, but really they're just quickly being ducked out by the side chain. So I think, there's a lot of overlap that I was hearing. And then the vocals, I'm definitely going to let Jim speak more on recording techniques, because I know that we talked about this a couple weeks ago that you were working on your whole recording setup and you're just learning more about that. So I'll let him speak on that. But I definitely think that one thing I can tell you is when you're rapping, especially, the way that you process rap vocals is a lot like how you would process like a bass, especially like a bass guitar. Like it's a powerful, punchy thing. Like you don't want a rap to float by in the mix. You want it to be like, boom, boom. You want it to hit you. So even though like a normal advice for recording a vocal is compress it around 4-1, that's for singers. For a rapper, sometimes I'll do it at like 8-1. And just do it really hard, because that way it'll give you the effect of like punctuating. So instead of like la la la, it'll be like bum bada bum bada bum, right? So 8, like really hard slamming, you can almost play with it like the elements of dubstep. And I can tell that you're really familiar with making really good, drums and really good subs, and just think about applying some of those really hard compression techniques to the rap. But before you do that, the caveat is you have to get really good quality recording, because if you hard compress stuff that is sort of poorly recorded, it's just going to bring up all the imperfections. And the other thing to watch is when you hard compress, the breathing may come up. So you're going to have to, there's definitely some plugins that will automatically get rid of the breath, but it's also not too hard to just like fade the edges out. I often end up doing that because it's quicker for me. So I'll let some other people speak, but I really think that besides the vocal production, the watery reverbs in the mid-range and the tails, it could sometimes be like, sometimes it's as simple as taking your bass and just turning down like the release. Because sometimes it's just releasing a couple milliseconds too long and it's bleeding with the next note. So I would just really like fine tune, stuff like that. And I know you're saying you like how it's tucked in the mix more, but I think that you can still keep it harder. And Frost is giving some advice in the chat, so I would definitely listen to that, because he's saying what I've been doing recently is rendering everything to audio so I can work with everything more precisely, like a manual sidechain. In the case of this track, I might break different parts of the same sound onto separate channels and have one channel EQ'd for when the sub is playing. That's really interesting. So Jim, you got some thoughts?
So the main thing that I was getting pulled into was the vocal sound in general. I couldn't tell if it was a reverb choice or if you were just recording in a very small room where we were just hearing a really compressed vocal that was picking up the fact that you were in a room that is not like a typical vocal booth, Vocal booths are dead for a reason. When you're trying to get a really clean vocal, it's because of the fact that when you go to compress that later on, any type of room sound that's on that vocal is just going to get louder and louder and louder and louder. You know, like it's just all this down here is going to come up and all this up here is going to come down. So I work with my sister-in-law on this a lot because she records in her bedroom. And one of the things I could tell you, one, get a baffle if you don't have one, the little, you know, around the microphone. I think they're $99. I know that's not the cheapest thing for most people, but they help drastically. Two, a big thing people don't realize when you're recording vocals at home in your bedroom, do it in the center of the room. Don't put yourself in the corner. Okay, always be in the center of the room because it's going to put you the farthest away. The microphone's going to be the farthest away from where the reflection's going to come back, and hopefully that little baffle will take care of most of the rest of that. You know, outside of that, vocal compressor, get an 1176. I can't stress that enough. I literally cannot stress that enough.
The most expensive advice of the night.
Well, okay, so. And I have to go back and say this again, but Waves does have the CLA 76. It's done by Chris Lord-Alge. He's a super crazy famous music producer who makes a lot of plugins with Waves. But his 1176 compressor is typically only $29, so it doesn't break the bank, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. I have actually been able to sit next to in a real 1176 and hear it on a vocal that I was working on, and then hear the plug-in to it side by side, and I was super impressed with how the plug-in sounded. So, just saying, Waves CLA 1176. Get it.
I hope we don't find out you've been lobbied by Waves, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, I'm sorry. Well, I was going to point out earlier Waves Factory because they make that, what's the one plugin where you can just sidechain shit and it'll just duck stuff out really fast for you. It's like so easy. I forget what it's called. But anyway.
It's not Kickstart. No? I don't know. That's the only one
I always forget what it's called. But I was just going to point out Waves Factory because I've only been pointing out Waves all night long, but I guess it still kind of falls into the same realm.
Yeah. Oh, Track Spacer.
Track Spacer, that's it.
Frost. Yes. Track Spacer.
Schwilly, let me answer that real quick because you said, what does Waves one do again? The 1176 is a compressor, but it is legitimately one of the best compressors for vocals you will ever get your hands on. It's practically an industry standard when it comes to vocal compressors.
Yeah, totally. Natty, do you have any other advice to close out the night?
I mean, obviously, the whole recording vocals, especially by yourself thing, is something that I'm learning myself. So, I mean, all that advice is actually super useful for me, too. I really like the vibe on the whole. I mean, it would be interesting to see how this one develops further once you get that cleaner sound, because it'll open up a little bit more room to maybe add a little bit more of your percussion, because once you have a little bit more space, you can do all those sort of really, really tiny little changes that nobody hears, but are kind of there anyway. So I mean, but it's a case of I'd be very interested to see how the final version sounds more than me thinking there's anything else beyond what's being said there that needs to be changed.
Yeah, I mean, you said you got a new setup. Go re-record some vocals and bring it back in. Check in with us. I love that some people are coming back over different weeks and sending us updates, which is really fun to hear how it evolves. So, thank you so much, everybody.
One last thing. Schwilly, when it comes to anything like this, when it comes to vocals and stuff like this, what you're getting through that microphone into your DAW, like dry, that is going to be the determination of a good or not good vocal, like straight up. There's no, it's almost impossible to clean up a poorly resounding vocal. You got to get it good just right off the bat. And then at the end of the day, when you get a really good clean vocal, mixing it becomes easy as hell.
It's true. Yeah. It's kind of like just that everything recording is like that, I have like RX and, some people get it and they just lean on it. And it's like, man, why have you cleaned this up 17 times when you could have just re-recorded it? Like, it should be like the emergency when you just can't, like I used RX the other day to fix some like audio that I recorded at the beach that I couldn't do again. But, otherwise I agree with you. And Barrett's saying the same thing. It's a good vocal recording recording and recording technique. I mean, that's something that takes some time to learn. But when you watch a really good vocalist record, you ever seen like them move away from the mic? It's almost like they're compressing themselves. They're literally just, making it so they're getting the maximum sound pressure, but they're not overloading the mic. So he's asking how the second drop sound. I mean, I think your drops are solid, Shwilly. I think that is definitely something. Oh, more overlapping, less overlapping to me than the first. Definitely, because there was just those notes in the beginning that really stood out. But I definitely still think it has that super like low mid. It's got a lot of mud in it that needs to be notched. So that's one case where I might go in and use an EQ that has a sharper Q and really just do like I've seen Frost sometimes do these EQs where it just looks like a reverse comb. Like he's just notching every like this and this and that, because sometimes you just got to do it, especially when you're doing sound design. There's not really any wrong answer with sound design except hurting people's ears and mud. So you don't want either of those things. And then other than that, I think it's free. It's open to that. So yeah, I just super thanks to Nathaniel and Jim for giving the best advice. I love having you two here. And we have a couple of things coming up this week. So please tune in Saturday for Print My Live, where we turn a song into a performable set. And Sunday, Jim's going to be doing his show and he's going to be bringing it to ILBC, Sampling Sundays. So that's going to be more on an American time zone, Sunday evenings. So join our Discord if you're not in our Discord already. Hang out on Twitch. We love having you. Any last words, you two?
Thank you for the good songs, everybody.
Yeah, agreed. I really had a great time. I loved all the tracks, and I think that this is such a fun thing to do. And you guys make sure that you're telling your friends, make sure you're spreading the word. Let's get some more people in here. Let's get some more viewers, and let's turn this into something big. I think this is super fun, and I think there's so much talent we need to showcase out there. So let's make sure we spread the word on all ends, and let's get a lot of people super hyped on this situation.
Number 1 on Twitch. Let's go.
Number 1 on Twitch. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Take care.